The muffled screams from inside the trunk made Daniel's blood run cold. His trembling hands fumbled with the crowbar as he pried open the rusted metal, revealing a woman bound and gagged, her designer dress torn, mascara streaking down her bruised face. What this broke single father didn't know was that he'd just discovered Sophia Hale, a millionaire CEO whose disappearance had made national headlines. But right now, she was just a terrified woman who needed saving. If you're watching from New York, Chicago, or anywhere across America, stay with me until the end of this incredible story and comment your city below. I want to see how far this tale of fate, courage, and unexpected love has traveled. The September morning air bit through Daniel Hayes' worn flannel jacket as he pushed his shopping cart through the gates of Murphy's salvage yard. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange that reminded him of the watercolors his 6-year-old son Tommy loved to paint. But Daniel didn't have time to admire sunrises anymore. Not since Sarah had walked out 2 years ago, leaving him to raise their boy alone while drowning in medical bills from Tommy's asthma treatments. "Come on, Rusty," Daniel called to his German Shepherd mix, a loyal companion he'd rescued from this very junkyard 3 years back when the dog was nothing but skin and bones. Now Rusty trotted alongside him, alert and protective, his golden eyes scanning the maze of abandoned vehicles that stretched out before them like a graveyard of broken dreams. Daniel had been coming to Murphy's for months now, ever since he'd lost his job at the auto plant. Old man Murphy, who'd known Daniel's father back in the day, let him scavenge for copper wire and aluminum parts before the official crew arrived at 7. It was honest work, even if it barely kept the lights on in their tiny apartment above the laundromat on Riverside Street. "Daddy says we're treasure hunters," Tommy had told his teacher last week, and Daniel's heart had both swelled with pride and broken a little. His boy didn't need to know that their treasure hunts were the only thing standing between them and eviction. The morning routine was always the same. Start with the newly arrived wrecks in Section C, where the best pickings were before other scavengers got to them. Daniel's hands, calloused and scarred from years of manual labor, worked efficiently as he stripped wire from a Toyota that had seen better days. The copper would fetch maybe $20 at the recycling center, enough for groceries if he was lucky. Rusty suddenly stopped, his ears perking up as a low growl rumbled in his throat. "What is it, boy?" Daniel asked, pausing in his work. The dog's nose pointed toward the back corner of the lot, where the really old wrecks were dumped, cars that had been picked clean years ago and left to rust in peace. Rusty took off running, and Daniel followed, his work boots crunching on broken glass and gravel. The dog led him to a black sedan, a late-model Lexus that seemed out of place among the decades-old rust buckets. The car couldn't have been there more than a day or two. Daniel knew every vehicle in this section by heart. The Lexus was in bad shape. The windows were tinted so dark he couldn't see inside. Deep scratches ran along the sides as if someone had keyed it in anger. The front bumper was crumpled, and one headlight hung loose like a broken eye. But what made Daniel's skin crawl was how clean it was otherwise. No dust, no bird droppings. This car had been driven here recently. Rusty was pawing at the trunk, whimpering now, instead of growling. The sound made the hair on Daniel's neck stand up. "Rusty, get back," Daniel commanded, but the dog wouldn't budge. Instead, he started barking sharp, urgent barks that echoed through the empty yard. Daniel leaned closer to the trunk, and his heart stopped. There it was, a sound so faint he might have imagined it. But no, there it was again. Muffled cries. Human cries. "Jesus Christ," Daniel breathed, his hands suddenly shaking. He grabbed the crowbar from his cart and wedged it into the trunk's seam. The lock had been damaged, probably in whatever accident had crumpled the front end. With a grunt of effort, Daniel popped it open. The sight that greeted him would be burned into his memory forever. A woman lay curled in the fetal position, her wrists bound behind her back with zip ties that had cut deep enough to draw blood. Duct tape covered her mouth, and her face was a canvas of purple bruises and dried tears. She wore what had once been an elegant black cocktail dress, now torn at the shoulder and stained with blood. A Cartier watch glinted on her wrist, the kind that cost more than Daniel made in 5 years. But it was her eyes that hit him hardest, wide, terrified, pleading, but still alive, still fighting. Holy shit," Daniel muttered, dropping the crowbar with a clang. "Ma'am, I'm going to help you. You're safe now. You're safe." His fingers fumbled with the duct tape, trying to be gentle as he peeled it away from her mouth. She gasped, sucking in air like she'd been underwater. "Please," she whispered, her voice raw and broken. "Please help me. They're coming back. They said they're coming back." "Who? Who's coming back?" Daniel asked as he pulled out his pocket knife to cut the zip ties. The plastic had dug so deep that her wrists started bleeding fresh when released. "I don't know their names. They grabbed me from the parking garage 3 days ago, I think. Maybe 4. I don't know anymore." Her words tumbled out in a rush as Daniel helped her sit up. "They want money. Ransom. They said if my company doesn't pay—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Daniel shrugged off his flannel jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. She was shivering violently despite the warm morning. "Can you stand?" She tried, but her legs buckled immediately. Daniel caught her before she hit the ground, and she clung to him like he was the last solid thing in a world gone mad. "I've got you," he said, surprised by how steady his voice sounded when inside he was screaming. "We need to get you out of here. Can you walk if I help you?" She nodded, though Daniel could see the effort it cost her. Every step was agony. He could see it in the way she bit her lip, the way her breath hitched. Whatever those bastards had done to her, it was more than just the visible bruises. Rusty led the way, constantly looking back to make sure they were following. The dog seemed to understand the urgency, his usual playful nature replaced by protective instincts. "My name's Daniel," he said, trying to keep her talking, keep her conscious. "That's Rusty. He's the one who found you." "Sophia," she managed between labored breaths. "I'm Sophia." They were halfway across the yard when Rusty froze, a low growl building in his throat. Daniel heard it a second later, the sound of engines approaching. Not the rumble of Murphy's crew trucks. Something else. Multiple vehicles moving fast. "Shit," Daniel hissed. Without thinking, he scooped Sophia into his arms. She weighed nothing, as if fear and captivity had hollowed her out. "Hold on!" He ran. Not toward the main gate where the engines were getting louder, but deeper into the maze of wrecked cars. His boots slipped on oil-slicked ground, and twice he nearly went down, but somehow he kept his feet. Sophia buried her face in his chest, her fingers gripping his t-shirt so tight her knuckles went white. The vehicle screeched to a halt somewhere near the Lexus. Doors slammed, voices carried on the morning air, angry, urgent voices. "The trunk's open! Fuck! She's gone!" She couldn't have gotten far, not in her condition. Search the yard, every fucking inch, and if that old man Murphy shows up, deal with him. Daniel's blood went cold. These weren't just kidnappers. These were killers. He ducked behind a stack of crushed cars, setting Sophia down as gently as he could. Her eyes were wide with terror, and he pressed a finger to his lips. She nodded, understanding. Rusty pressed against them, silent now, his training as a junkyard dog keeping him still when it mattered. Daniel peered through a gap in the twisted metal. 3 men were spreading out across the yard, all carrying guns. They moved like professionals, checking corners, looking under vehicles. One of them was getting closer. Daniel looked around desperately. To their left was a drainage pipe that led under the fence to the adjacent lot. An abandoned warehouse he'd explored once looking for copper pipes. It would be a tight fit, and Sophia was in no condition to crawl, but it was their only chance. "Trust me," he whispered in her ear, and she nodded again. He went first, backwards, pulling Sophia along as gently as he could. She bit back cries of pain as her injured body scraped against the corrugated metal. Rusty followed last, his presence a comfort in the darkness of the pipe. They emerged on the other side just as they heard shouting from the yard. "Found blood! They went this way!" Daniel didn't wait. He picked Sophia up again and ran toward the warehouse. The loading dock door was rusted open just enough for them to squeeze through. Inside, shafts of sunlight pierced through broken windows, illuminating a vast space filled with old machinery and shipping containers. "In here," Daniel said, guiding them into a container that still had both doors. He pulled them shut, leaving just a crack for air and light. They huddled in the darkness, listening. Daniel could feel Sophia's heart racing against his chest, or maybe that was his own. Rusty sat alert, his ears tracking every sound. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, they heard vehicles starting up again, driving away. But Daniel didn't move. Not yet. He'd learned in his rough neighborhood that the first leaving was often a fake-out. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, he heard footsteps outside the warehouse. A single set, moving carefully. Could have sworn I saw movement in here, a voice said, apparently into a phone or radio. Yeah, I'll check it out. No, if I find them, I'll handle it. The boss wants this clean. The footsteps got closer. Daniel felt Sophia tense beside him. He grabbed a piece of rebar from the container floor, his only weapon against a man with a gun. The footsteps paused right outside their container. The door handle rattled. Rusty exploded into motion, bursting through the door with a snarl that sounded like hell itself. Daniel heard the man scream, heard the gun go off, heard the sound of a body hitting concrete. When he peered out, the man was on the ground, Rusty's teeth locked on his gun arm. The weapon had skittered away across the floor. "Rusty, release!" Daniel commanded, and the dog backed off, still growling. The man scrambled to his feet and ran, cradling his bleeding arm. Daniel grabbed the dropped gun, though he'd never held one before in his life. His hand shook as he pointed it at the fleeing figure, but he couldn't bring himself to pull the trigger. The man disappeared into the morning shadows, and they heard a car peel out moments later. "We have to go," Daniel said, turning back to Sophia. "They know we're here." But when he looked at her, really looked at her in the light streaming through the container doors, his heart clenched. She was in bad shape. Worse than he'd initially thought. Her left eye was swollen shut, her lips split and bleeding. Dark bruises ringed her throat like a necklace of violence. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't run anymore. Just go. Take your dog and go. They want me, not you." "Like hell," Daniel said, surprising himself with his vehemence. "I didn't pull you out of that trunk just to leave you here." "You don't understand," Sophia said, tears streaming down her bruised face. "These people, they're connected, powerful. If they find out you helped me, lady, I've got nothing left to lose except my boy, and I'll be damned if I'm going to let them hurt you just because some assholes think they own the world." Daniel helped her to her feet again. "Now come on, I know a place." The place was St. Augustine's Church, 6 blocks away. Father Miguel was an old friend who'd helped Daniel through his darkest days after Sarah left. The church had a basement shelter for the homeless, and more importantly, it had a phone that couldn't be traced back to Daniel. They made it there as the city was waking up. Daniel kept to alleys and side streets, Sophia leaning heavily on him, Rusty scouting ahead. Every car that passed made them freeze. Every siren in the distance made Daniel's heart race. But somehow, miraculously, they made it. Father Miguel took one look at Sophia and immediately ushered them inside without questions. That was Miguel's way. Help first, ask later. "Dear God, what happened to her?" the priest asked once they were safe in his office. "I found her in a trunk at Murphy's," Daniel said. "She was kidnapped. The men who took her are still looking for her." Miguel crossed himself. "We need to call the police." "No," Sophia said, louder than she'd spoken since Daniel found her. "No police. They have people everywhere. That's how they grabbed me in the first place. Someone inside tipped them off about my schedule." Daniel and Miguel exchanged glances. "Then what do you want to do?" Daniel asked. Sophia was quiet for a moment, then, "I need to call someone. Someone I trust. But not from here. They might be monitoring local calls." Miguel produced an old prepaid cell phone from his desk. "Use this. I keep it for emergencies." Sophia's fingers shook as she dialed. Daniel turned away to give her privacy, but he could hear her end of the conversation. "Marcus? It's me. Yes, I'm alive. No, don't. They're probably watching. I need you to send the security team to..." She looked at Miguel, who quietly gave her the address. "And Marcus, discreetly, use the Canadian team, not the locals." "Yes, I'll explain everything." She hung up and slumped in the chair. "They'll be here in an hour." "Who are you?" Miguel asked gently. "If you don't mind me asking." Sophia looked at Daniel, then back at the priest. "My name is Sophia Hale. I'm the CEO of Hale Industries." Daniel felt his jaw drop. Hale Industries was one of the biggest tech companies in the country. He'd seen Sophia's face on magazine covers at the grocery store checkout, though he hadn't recognized her through the bruises and terror. "Jesus," he breathed. You're that Sophia Hale? The billionaire? Millionaire, she corrected with a weak smile. The media likes to exaggerate, but yes. Why would someone... Miguel began. Industrial espionage, probably. Or maybe just money. I don't know yet. She looked at Daniel with those intense green eyes that even bruising couldn't dim. You saved my life. You didn't even know who I was, and you saved me. Anyone would have... No, she interrupted. They wouldn't have. Those men at the yard, the other workers who must have driven past that car. No one else stopped. No one else looked. But you did. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. He just shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. Rusty's the real hero. He found you. As if understanding, Rusty patted over to Sophia and laid his head on her knee. She stroked his fur with trembling fingers, and for the first time since Daniel had found her, she really smiled. Thank you, Rusty, she whispered. The next hour passed in a blur. Miguel tended to Sophia's wounds as best he could with the church's first aid supplies. Daniel called his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, to ask her to pick Tommy up from school and watch him for a few hours, making up a story about extra shifts at a construction site. When the security team arrived, 6 serious-looking men in black SUVs, Daniel felt like he was in a movie. They swept the church, secured the perimeter, and had a medic examine Sophia before declaring it safe to move her. We've secured your penthouse, Ms. Hale, the lead man, Marcus, reported. The police have been notified through proper channels. The FBI is getting involved since this crossed state lines. State lines? Sophia asked. The car you were found in was reported stolen from New Jersey 3 days ago. We're tracking the route now. Sophia stood, still wearing Daniel's flannel jacket over her ruined dress. She walked over to where Daniel stood awkwardly by the door, feeling very out of place among all these professional security types. I owe you everything, she said simply. You don't owe me nothing, Daniel replied. I'm just glad you're okay. I want to repay you, reward you, anything you need. I don't want your money, Daniel said more sharply than he intended. His pride, already battered by months of poverty, couldn't take being treated like a charity case. Sophia studied him for a moment. Then what do you want? Daniel thought about Tommy, about the overdue rent, about the medical bills, about the breakfast he'd skip again tomorrow so his son could eat. But he also thought about the look in Sophia's eyes when he'd opened that trunk, the way she'd trusted him completely. I want you to be safe, he said finally. That's all. Something shifted in Sophia's expression. Marcus, give me a minute. The security chief looked unhappy but stepped outside. Sophia moved closer to Daniel, close enough that he could smell her expensive perfume mixed with the salt of dried tears. I need to ask you something, she said quietly. The men who took me, they knew things, personal things, about my routine, my security codes, where I'd be and when. Someone close to me betrayed me. You think someone you know set this up? I'm certain of it, and right now you're the only person in this city I know I can trust. You and Father Miguel. She paused, seeming to gather courage. I know you don't want money, but would you consider a job? I need a bodyguard. Someone those men won't recognize, someone who isn't connected to my usual security team. Daniel almost laughed. Lady, I'm a laid-off factory worker who picks through junkyards for scrap metal. I'm not bodyguard material. You fought off professional kidnappers with nothing but a crowbar and a dog. You kept your head when most people would have panicked, and most importantly, you didn't leave me behind when you could have saved yourself. She pulled a business card from Marcus's jacket pocket and wrote something on the back. Think about it, please. She pressed the card into his hand, her fingers lingering for just a moment on his. Then Marcus was back, ushering her toward the SUVs. At the door, she turned back. Daniel? That flannel jacket, can I keep it? Just for now? It makes me feel safe. Daniel nodded, his throat suddenly tight. Of course. And then she was gone, whisked away in a convoy of black vehicles, leaving Daniel standing in Father Miguel's office with a business card and a dog who wouldn't stop wagging his tail. You did a good thing today, my son, Father Miguel said, placing a hand on Daniel's shoulder. Did I? Daniel asked, looking at the card. On one side was Sophia's official CEO title and contact information. On the back, In her handwriting was a phone number and the words, "Personal line, day or night, you saved me, let me save you back." "Yes, go home to your boy," Miguel said gently. "But Danielle, don't let pride keep you from accepting help when it's offered. Sometimes God works through the most unexpected people." Daniel walked home in a daze, Rusty trotting beside him. The morning that had started with him searching for scrap metal to buy groceries had somehow turned into... what? A job offer from a millionaire? It's a chance at something more? So, when he picked up Tommy from Mrs. Chen's apartment, his son launched himself into Daniel's arms. "Daddy, Mrs. Chen made cookies, and I drew you a picture." Tommy produced a crayon drawing of what appeared to be Daniel, Tommy, and Rusty standing in front of a house. Not an apartment, but an actual house with a yard and a tree. "That's us in our new home," Tommy explained seriously. "When we find enough treasure." Daniel hugged his son tighter, thinking about the card in his pocket. "Yeah, buddy, maybe sooner than you think." That night, after Tommy was asleep, Daniel sat at their small kitchen table, staring at his phone. The smart thing would be to forget all about Sophia Hale and her dangerous world. He had Tommy to think about. Getting involved with whatever was happening to her could put his son at risk. But he couldn't forget the way she'd looked at him, not with pity or condescension, but with genuine gratitude and something else. Recognition, maybe. Like she saw something in him that he'd forgotten was there. His phone rang, startling him. Unknown number. "Hello? Daniel?" Sophia's voice was stronger now, though still tired. "I'm sorry to call so late. I wanted to make sure you got home safely." "We're fine. How are you? Did the doctors..." "I'm okay. Bruised, but okay. The FBI caught 2 of the men. They're looking for the 3rd. A pause. "They were hired guns, professionals. This wasn't random. You know who's behind it?" "I have suspicions. That's why I need someone I can trust. Someone outside the system." Another pause, longer this time. "I looked you up. I know about your situation, your son, the medical bills. I know you were laid off when Stryker Industries closed the plant." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I told you, I don't want..." "Stryker Industries is one of my subsidiaries," Sophia interrupted. "I didn't know about the plant closure until today. My board made that decision without consulting me. 300 people lost their jobs so we could increase profit margins by 2%. Daniel was speechless. "I can't undo what happened," Sophia continued, "but I can offer you something better than your old job. The bodyguard position, it pays $200,000 a year plus benefits. Full medical for you and your son, housing allowance, education fund for Tommy." That's insane money for a bodyguard. "It's hazard pay. Someone wants me dead, Daniel, and I need someone who gives a damn about keeping me alive for more than just a paycheck." Her voice softened. "I saw how you were with your dog, how gentle you were with me even when you were terrified. You're a protector by nature. I'm just offering to pay you for what you'd probably do anyway." Daniel thought about Tommy's drawing, about the house with the yard, about his son's asthma medication that he'd been rationing, about the empty refrigerator and the overdue rent notice. "Can I bring Rusty?" he asked. Sophia laughed, actually laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound Daniel had heard in years. "I insist on it. That dog is a better bodyguard than half my security team." "Then okay. Yes, I'll do it." "Thank you," Sophia said, and Daniel could hear the relief in her voice. "Can you start tomorrow? I'll send a car. I can drive myself. Just text me the address." "Daniel? Why did you really say yes? And don't tell me it's about the money." Daniel looked at Tommy's drawing again. "Because everybody deserves someone in their corner who sees them as more than just their bank account or their problems. You're not just some millionaire who got kidnapped. You're a person who went through hell and survived. And if I can help make sure you keep surviving, then that's worth more than any paycheck." The line was quiet for so long Daniel thought she'd hung up. Then, very softly, "I'll see you tomorrow, Daniel." After she hung up, Daniel sat in his tiny kitchen for a long time, processing everything that had happened. This morning, he'd been a nobody. A forgotten man in a city that didn't care if he lived or died. Now he was going to be the personal bodyguard to one of the richest women in America. Rusty patted over and put his head on Daniel's knee, looking up at him with those wise golden eyes. "Yeah, boy," Daniel said, scratching behind the dog's ears. "I know. Life's about to get real interesting." Outside, the city hummed with its usual nighttime symphony, sirens, car horns, music from the bar down the street. But for the first time in 2 years, Daniel didn't hear desperation in those sounds. He heard possibility. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, he'd walk into Sophia Hale's world of wealth and danger and corporate intrigue. But tonight, he was still just Daniel Hayes, single father, failed factory worker, junkyard scavenger who'd done one good thing and had his life transformed because of it. He thought about Sophia, alone in her penthouse, probably unable to sleep, jumping at every sound. He'd seen that look before in people who'd survived trauma. Hell, he'd seen it in his own mirror after Sarah left. The money and power didn't mean anything when you were afraid to close your eyes. Making a decision, he sent a text to the number she'd called from. If you can't sleep, you can call. Sometimes it helps just to know someone's awake with you. 3 dots appeared immediately, showing she was typing. Then they disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally. "Thank you. For everything. For seeing me when I was invisible in that trunk. For seeing me now." Daniel smiled, the first real smile he'd had in months. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know if he could actually protect Sophia from whoever was after her. He didn't know if he was walking into something that would destroy the quiet life he'd built for Tommy. But for the first time since his world had fallen apart, he felt like he was moving forward instead of just surviving. And it had all started with a dog's curious nose and a muffled cry for help from the trunk of an abandoned car. As he finally headed to bed, checking on Tommy one more time, Daniel thought about what Father Miguel had said about God working through unexpected people. He wasn't much for religion these days, but maybe the priest had a point. Maybe finding Sophia hadn't been chance at all. Maybe broken people were meant to find each other, to help each other become whole again. Or maybe he was overthinking it, and life was just random chaos that occasionally aligned in meaningful ways. Either way, Daniel Hayes was no longer just a single dad scraping by. He was a protector now, with a purpose beyond mere survival. And somewhere across the city, Sophia Hale was no longer just a millionaire CEO. She was a survivor who'd found an unlikely guardian in a junkyard at dawn. The story of how a desperate father and a wounded executive would change each other's lives had only just begun. But that's a tale for tomorrow. Tonight, Daniel fell asleep to the sound of Rusty's gentle snoring and Tommy's peaceful breathing, knowing that for the first time in years the morning would bring hope instead of dread. And in her penthouse, wrapped in a borrowed flannel jacket that still smelled of motor oil and honest work, Sophia Hale stared out at the city lights and felt something she hadn't experienced since the nightmare began. Safe. Not because of the security guard stationed outside her door or the state-of-the-art alarm system, but because somewhere in this vast city, a good man and his loyal dog were standing watch, even from miles away. Tomorrow would bring challenges neither of them could imagine. But tonight, 2 wounded souls had found each other in the most unlikely of places. And that was enough. That was everything. Daniel's alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., but he'd already been awake for an hour, staring at the ceiling and wondering what the hell he'd gotten himself into. The business card on his nightstand caught the early morning light filtering through the thin curtains, Sophia's handwriting seeming to glow like a promise or maybe a warning. Tommy stirred in the small bed across the room, and Daniel moved quietly to avoid waking him. Mrs. Chen had agreed to get Tommy ready for school and walk him there, though Daniel hadn't told her why he needed to leave so early. How could he explain that he was about to become a bodyguard to one of the richest women in America when he didn't quite believe it himself? Rusty watched him dress in his least-worn jeans and the only button-down shirt he owned that didn't have stains or tears. The dog's tail thumped against the floor, sensing something important was happening. "You ready for this, boy?" Daniel whispered, and Rusty's tail wagged harder. The address Sophia had texted him led to a building downtown that Daniel had walked past 1,000 times but never imagined entering. Glass and steel reaching toward the sky, a doorman in a uniform that probably cost more than Daniel's entire wardrobe, and a lobby that looked like it belonged in a museum rather than an apartment building. "Can I help you?" the doorman asked, his tone polite but clearly conveying that Daniel didn't belong here. Daniel Hayes, Ms. Hale is expecting me. The transformation in the doorman's demeanor was immediate. Of course, Mr. Hayes. She informed us you'd be arriving. The private elevator is this way, penthouse level. The elevator was bigger than Daniel's bathroom, with mirrors on three sides that reflected back a man who looked utterly out of place. Rusty sat perfectly still beside him, seeming to understand the gravity of the situation. When the doors opened directly into Sophia's penthouse, Daniel's breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city that looked like a photograph. The living room alone was bigger than his entire apartment, with furniture that looked like it had never been sat on, and art that probably cost more than he'd made in his lifetime. But what struck him most was how cold it all felt, like a beautiful prison rather than a home. Daniel! Sophia's voice came from behind him, and he turned to find her standing in the hallway. The bruises were more visible in the morning light, purple and yellow painting her face like a grotesque mask. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, but even in casual clothes, she looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Except for the eyes. The eyes still held that haunted look he recognized from yesterday. "Morning," he said, suddenly aware of how rough his voice sounded in this refined space. "How are you feeling?" "Like I was locked in a trunk for 3 days," she said with a bitter smile. "But alive, thanks to you." Marcus appeared from another room, his expression disapproving as he took in Daniel's appearance. "Ms. Hale, I still believe we should use someone from the approved security roster." "The approved roster that let someone kidnap me from my own parking garage?" Sophia's voice was steel. "No, Marcus. Daniel stays." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Then he'll need to be briefed on protocols, fitted for appropriate attire, trained on—" "All of that can wait," Sophia interrupted. "Right now I need to go to the office. The board is having an emergency meeting about my absence, and if I don't show up, they'll use it as an excuse to push through the merger with Kronos Corp." "The merger you've been blocking," Daniel said, remembering news reports he'd half heard on the radio while searching for work. Sophia looked surprised that he knew about it. "Yes. It would mean shuttering 6 more plants and laying off thousands of workers. But the board only sees dollar signs." "Is that why someone tried to remove you from the equation?" Daniel asked carefully. "Possibly." She moved to the windows, looking out at the city below. "Or it could be Marcus's theory that it's connected to the new encryption software we're developing for the Defense Department. Or it could be personal. I've made a lot of enemies getting to where I am." "Where would you like to start?" Marcus asked, though his tone suggested he'd rather be anywhere else than working with Daniel. "The office. I need to show them I'm not broken, that I'm still in control." She turned to Daniel. "Are you ready for this? Once we leave this apartment, you're officially my bodyguard. That means you go where I go. You watch everyone. Trust no one except me." "What about him?" Daniel nodded toward Marcus. "Especially him," Sophia said, and Marcus's face darkened. "I'm not accusing you, Marcus, but someone in my inner circle betrayed me. Until I know who, everyone is a suspect." The ride to Hale Industries headquarters was Daniel's first taste of what his new life would be like. They rode in an armored SUV with bulletproof glass, Marcus driving while Daniel sat in the back with Sophia, Rusty alert between them. Sophia spent the ride on her phone, her CEO persona sliding into place like armor, but Daniel noticed how her hands still trembled slightly. "The board doesn't know about the kidnapping," she explained between calls. "As far as they're concerned, I had a family emergency. We need to keep it that way for now." "Why?" "Because whoever's behind this might be on that board, and I want them to think they failed completely, that I have no idea what happened." The Hale Industries building was another monument to glass and steel, with Sophia's name etched in silver above the entrance. Employees scattered like startled birds as she strode through the lobby, Daniel and Rusty flanking her, Marcus bringing up the rear. Whispers followed in their wake, and Daniel caught fragments. "Is that a dog? Who's the guy in jeans? She looks terrible." Sophia never slowed, never acknowledged the stares. She moved like a shark through water, all forward momentum and predatory grace. But Daniel stayed close enough to see the slight favor she gave her left leg, the way she gripped the elevator rail for support when she thought no one was looking. The boardroom was on the 40th floor, a massive space dominated by a table that could seat 30. 12 people were already assembled, and they all stood when Sophia entered, though their expressions ranged from concern to barely concealed frustration. "Sophia, thank God," an older man with silver hair said, moving toward her with arms outstretched. "We were so worried." "I'm fine, Richard," Sophia said, neatly sidestepping his embrace. "Shall we get started?" "Perhaps you should rest," a woman in a severe black suit suggested. "You look unwell." "What I look like is none of your concern, Victoria. What should concern you is this emergency meeting you called without my approval." "You were unreachable for 3 days," a younger man said from the far end of the table. Derek Winters, according to the nameplate. Something about him made Daniel's instincts prickle. Maybe it was the satisfied smile that didn't match his concerned words. "We had to consider contingency plans." "Contingency plans," Sophia repeated, taking her seat at the head of the table. "You mean the Kronos merger?" "It's a generous offer," Richard said, settling into his own chair. "And with the recent instability—" "What instability?" Sophia's voice could have frozen water. "I was gone for 3 days handling a personal matter. If this company can't function without me for 72 hours, then perhaps I need to reconsider all of your positions." Daniel positioned himself against the wall where he could see everyone, Rusty sitting at attention beside him. Several board members kept glancing at them nervously, clearly unsettled by their presence. "Who is this?" Victoria finally asked, gesturing toward Daniel. "And why is there a dog in the boardroom?" "Mr. Hayes is my new personal security consultant," Sophia said smoothly. "Given the recent security breaches we've experienced, I felt it necessary to bring in someone from outside our usual channels." "Security breaches?" Derek leaned forward, that satisfied smile growing. "What security breaches?" Sophia met his gaze steadily. "Someone accessed my personal schedule from our servers. It is investigating, but until we know more, Mr. Hayes and his partner will be accompanying me." "His partner is a dog," Victoria said flatly. "A trained security dog," Sophia corrected. "More reliable than some humans I could mention." The meeting proceeded with the kind of corporate doublespeak that made Daniel's head hurt. Quarterly projections, market analyses, strategic initiatives, all of it seemed to be code for "we want to sell out and get rich." Sophia blocked every attempt to revisit the Kronos merger, her arguments sharp and precise despite the exhaustion Daniel could see pulling at her features. It was Derek who finally pushed too hard. "With all due respect, Sophia, you're being emotional about this. The plant closures are a necessary evil. Those workers are acceptable losses for the greater good of the company." The room went silent. Daniel saw Sophia's knuckles whiten as she gripped the edge of the table. "Acceptable losses," she repeated quietly. "Tell me, Derek, have you ever been an acceptable loss? Have you ever had someone decide your entire life was worth less than a percentage point of profit?" "That's not—" "Mr. Hayes," Sophia said, not looking away from Derek. "How many people lost their jobs when the Stryker plant closed?" 312, Daniel answered, his voice carrying across the room. 43 of them were less than 2 years from retirement. 67 were single parents. 8 attempted suicide in the following months. 2 succeeded. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Derek's smile finally faltered. "You see," Sophia said, standing slowly, using the table for support in a way that looked like a power move rather than necessity. "Those aren't acceptable losses. They're people, families, communities destroyed so you can buy another yacht or vacation home. The merger is dead. If anyone brings it up again, they'll be looking for new employment. Is that clear?" Murmurs of assent, though Daniel noticed Derek and Victoria exchanging glances that suggested this wasn't over. The meeting continued for another hour, but the energy had shifted. Sophia had reasserted her control, even if her body was running on pure willpower. When it finally ended, she maintained her composure until the elevator doors closed, then sagged against the wall. "You okay?" Daniel asked, moving to support her. "No," she admitted. "Everything hurts, and I think I might throw up." "We should get you to a hospital." "Can't, shows weakness." She straightened with effort. "Just need to make it through the department head meetings, then I can rest." "Sophia, please, Daniel, if I stop now, I might not be able to start again." The next 3 hours were a masterclass in determination. Sophia moved through the building like a force of nature, checking in with different departments, reassuring employees, putting out fires that had sparked in her absence. Daniel shadowed her every step, watching faces, noting exits, learning the rhythms of her world. It was in the elevator between the 15th and 16th floors that it happened. The elevator jerked to a stop, the lights flickering. Sophia's hand immediately found Daniel's arm, her breathing quickening. "It's okay," he said, moving in front of her as Rusty growled low in his throat. The lights went out completely. In the darkness, Daniel heard the distinctive sound of the elevator panel being pried open. His hand went to the gun Marcus had reluctantly provided him with that morning. "Stay behind me," he whispered to Sophia. The emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in an eerie red glow. The panel fell away, and a hand reached through, holding something that glinted metallic. Daniel didn't think. He grabbed the hand, yanking hard. A man tumbled into the elevator, a knife clattering across the floor. Before the attacker could recover, Rusty was on him, teeth bared, while Daniel kicked the knife away and pinned the man down. "Who sent you?" Daniel demanded. The man laughed, blood running from where his head had hit the elevator wall. "You think you've won? She's dead anyway. If not today, then tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then next week. He won't stop until—" The elevator suddenly resumed moving, and the man used the distraction to twist free, not to attack, but to slam his head against the wall again, harder this time. He went limp, unconscious or worse. "Shit!" Daniel checked for a pulse. It was there, but weak. "Sophia, are you—" She was pressed against the far corner, her face pale but her eyes fierce. "I'm fine." "Who is he? Who won't stop?" Before Daniel could answer, the elevator opened on the 16th floor to reveal Marcus and 3 security guards, weapons drawn. "We have a situation," Daniel said unnecessarily, given the unconscious attacker bleeding on the floor. The next hour was chaos. Police, paramedics, security reviews. The attacker regained consciousness but refused to speak, except to laugh and repeat that Sophia was living on borrowed time. They found no identification on him, and his fingerprints weren't in any database. "Professional," Marcus said grimly as they finally left the building through a secured exit. "Hired specifically for this job, probably from overseas." "How did he get past security?" Sophia demanded. "That's what we're trying to determine. But Ms. Hale, I strongly recommend you go somewhere safe while we investigate." "Where?" Sophia asked bitterly. "My home? Where they know to find me? A hotel? Where any employee could be bought? Where exactly is safe, Marcus?" Daniel thought of his tiny apartment, of Mrs. Chen probably making dinner for Tommy right now. "I know a place." Both Sophia and Marcus looked at him in surprise. "It's not what you're used to," Daniel continued, "but it's the last place anyone would look for you." An hour later, Sophia Hale, millionaire CEO, was climbing the narrow stairs to Daniel's apartment above the laundromat, the sound of washing machines rumbling below. The hallway smelled of detergent and old carpet, and someone's TV was too loud 3 doors down. "This is cozy," Sophia said carefully as Daniel unlocked his door. "It's a dump," Daniel said bluntly, "but it's safe. Nobody here asks questions, and everyone watches out for everyone else. Plus, Mrs. Chen next door is better than any security system." As if summoned, Mrs. Chen's door opened. The elderly woman took in Sophia's bruised face and expensive clothes with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "This is your overtime?" she asked Daniel in accented English. "Mrs. Chen, this is Sophie. She's going to stay for dinner." Mrs. Chen studied Sophia for a long moment, then nodded. "I made extra soup. Tommy's helping set the table." The door opened wider, and Tommy burst out, "Daddy, you're home! And you brought a friend, a pretty friend. Is she why you dressed nice this morning?" Daniel felt his face heat up. "Tommy, this is Ms. Sophie. Sophie, my son Tommy." Tommy extended his hand solemnly. "Pleased to meet you. Did you get hurt? Your face looks like Jimmy's did when he fell off the monkey bars, only worse." "Tommy," Daniel warned, but Sophia laughed, the first genuine laugh he'd heard from her. "I did get hurt," she said, shaking Tommy's small hand. "But your dad is helping me feel better." "He's good at that," Tommy said matter-of-factly. "When I have asthma attacks, he always makes me feel safe." "Come on, Mrs. Chen's soup is the best." And so Sophia Hale found herself sitting at a cramped table in a tiny apartment, eating homemade wonton soup while a 6-year-old chattered about school and superheroes and whether Rusty could beat up a bear. Rusty's tough, Tommy said seriously, but bears are really big. Maybe if Rusty had help. Do you have a dog, Miss Sophie? No, Sophia said softly. I never had time for pets. That's sad. Everyone should have a dog, or a cat, or a hamster. Jimmy has a hamster named Mr. Whiskers, but I think Rusty would eat him, so we can't get one. Mrs. Chen kept refilling Sophia's bowl, making disapproving sounds at how thin she was. You need meat on your bones. How are you going to fight if you're all skin and sadness? Daniel watched Sophia navigate this foreign world with a grace that had nothing to do with corporate training. She listened to Tommy's stories with genuine interest, complimented Mrs. Chen's cooking in a way that made the older woman beam, and somehow fit into their little makeshift family dinner like she'd always been there. After dinner, while Tommy showed Sophia his collection of dinosaur books, Mrs. Chen pulled Daniel aside. That's not Sophie, she said quietly. That's Sophia Hale. I'm not stupid, Daniel. I read newspapers. I can explain. No need. She's in trouble. You're helping. That's enough. Mrs. Chen patted his arm. But be careful. That kind of trouble has a way of spreading. When they finally returned to Daniel's apartment, Tommy was yawning. Daniel got him ready for bed while Sophia looked around the small space, taking in the water stains on the ceiling, the secondhand furniture, the careful organization of poverty where everything had a place because there was no room for excess. The couch pulls out, Daniel said awkwardly. I'll take the floor. I can't kick you out of your own bed. You're injured and exhausted. You need proper rest. He pulled out the sofa bed, trying not to be embarrassed by the patched sheets. Tommy and I share the bedroom. Bathroom's down the hall. Lock works most of the time. Sophia sat on the edge of the sofa bed, looking lost. Why are you doing this, really? Daniel considered lying, giving her some noble answer about duty or justice, but something about the vulnerability in her eyes demanded honesty. Because I know what it's like to have your world fall apart. When Sarah left, when I lost my job, I felt like I was drowning. Nobody threw me a rope. Nobody even noticed I was going under. I don't want you to feel that alone. I've been alone my whole life, Sophia said quietly. Even in boardrooms full of people. Even at galas with hundreds of guests. She gestured around the tiny apartment. This is the first time in years I've felt real. Tommy appeared in his dinosaur pajamas. Ms. Sophie, are you having a sleepover? I guess I am, Sophia said. Cool. Tomorrow's Saturday, so we can have pancakes. Daddy makes the best pancakes. Do you like pancakes? I love pancakes, Sophia assured him. Good. Daddy, can Ms. Sophie meet the roof pigeons tomorrow? We'll see, buddy. Bed now. Tommy hugged Daniel, then surprised everyone by hugging Sophia too. I'm glad you're here, he said simply, then disappeared into the bedroom. The apartment grew quiet except for the rumble of the laundromat below and the distant sound of sirens that were as constant as breathing in this part of the city. Daniel set up his makeshift bed on the floor, Rusty curling up beside him. Daniel? Sophia's voice came soft in the darkness. That man in the elevator. He said he won't stop. Someone specific is behind this. We'll figure it out, Daniel promised. But not tonight. Tonight you're safe. How can you be sure? Daniel thought about it. Because this is my territory. These are my people. And nobody's getting to you without going through me and Rusty first. He heard her shift on the sofa bed. I've had bodyguards before. Lots of them. They protected me because it was their job. But you actually care. Everybody deserves somebody who gives a damn, Daniel said simply. Silence stretched between them, comfortable rather than awkward. Just as Daniel was drifting off, Sophia spoke again. That flannel jacket. I still have it. Is that weird? Keep it as long as you need. It smells like safety, she said, so quietly he almost didn't hear it. Daniel stared at the ceiling, thinking about how strange life was. This morning, he'd been nobody. Tonight, one of the richest women in America was sleeping on his broken sofa bed, wearing his old jacket, hiding from assassins in an apartment that barely qualified as habitable. But somehow, it felt right. Like all the broken pieces of their lives had needed to break exactly the way they did to create this moment. Rusty's tail thumped once against the floor, as if in agreement. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace, unaware that above a laundromat in a forgotten neighborhood, two wounded souls were finding something neither had expected: hope. The night deepened, and Daniel dozed fitfully, waking every time a board creaked or a siren passed too close. Around 3 a.m., he heard Sophia crying quietly, trying to muffle the sound in the pillow. He wanted to go to her, to offer comfort, but instinct told him she needed to release this pain privately, that his presence would make her shut down the emotions she desperately needed to process. So he lay still, pretending to sleep, while Rusty padded over to the sofa bed and gently laid his head on the mattress near Sophia. He heard her surprised intake of breath, then the quiet words, "Hey, boy." "Yeah, I'm okay. Just sad. Is that allowed?" Rusty's tail wagged softly, and Sophia's crying gradually subsided. Daniel smiled in the darkness. His dog was a better therapist than most humans. Morning came too soon, announced by Tommy's excited voice. "Pancake day! Pancake day! Miss Sophie, are you awake? It's pancake day!" Daniel opened his eyes to find his son bouncing on his toes beside the sofa bed, where Sophia was sitting up, her hair a mess, the bruises on her face even more colorful in the morning light, but smiling genuinely at Tommy's enthusiasm. "I'm awake," she said, "and ready for these famous pancakes. They're the best. Daddy puts chocolate chips in mine, but he says that's only for special occasions. Is today special?" Sophia and Daniel's eyes met across the room. "Yeah, buddy," Daniel said. "Today's special." As Daniel mixed pancake batter in their tiny kitchen, Sophia sat at the counter with Tommy, who was explaining the complex social dynamics of first grade with serious intensity. And then Madison said that Brooklyn's shoes were stupid, but Brooklyn's shoes light up, so they're obviously not stupid. And I told Madison that, but she said I was taking sides, but I wasn't. I was just stating facts. "Politics start early," Sophia murmured, and Daniel snorted. "You should see the PTA meetings," he said, flipping a pancake. "Makes corporate takeovers look friendly." "You go to PTA meetings?" Sophia sounded surprised. "Everyone. Tommy's education is the one thing I won't compromise on, no matter how tight money gets." His phone buzzed. Marcus. "There's been a development." Marcus's voice was tense. "Can you bring Ms. Hale to the office immediately?" "What kind of development?" "The kind we shouldn't discuss over the phone." Daniel looked at Sophia, who was helping Tommy set the table, looking more relaxed than he'd seen her since he'd pulled her from that trunk. "Give us an hour." "Daniel?" "An hour, Marcus. The world won't end if she finishes breakfast." He hung up, and Sophia raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Crisis?" "Something, but it can wait for pancakes." They ate breakfast like a normal family, Tommy chattering, Sophia asking him questions about school, Daniel watching them both and feeling something dangerous stirring in his chest. This was temporary. Sophia would go back to her penthouse, her millions, her corporate world. He'd go back to... what? Being her bodyguard, watching from the sidelines as she lived a life he could never be part of? "Daniel?" Sophia's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "You okay?" "Yeah. Just thinking we should head out soon." Tommy's face fell. "But you promised to show Miss Sophie the roof pigeons." "Another time, buddy." "You keep pigeons on the roof?" Sophia asked. "They're not really ours," Tommy explained, "but Daddy built them a house and we feed them, and sometimes they let us pet them. Daddy says they're free, but they choose to stay because they know we care about them." Sophia's eyes found Daniel's again, something unreadable in her expression. "That's beautiful. Can I at least show her my room?" Tommy asked. While Tommy gave Sophia the grand tour of their tiny bedroom, pointing out his drawings taped to the walls and his small collection of action figures, Daniel called Mrs. Chen to watch Tommy. "Be careful," the older woman said when she arrived. "Whatever trouble she's in, it has teeth." The ride to Hale Industries was different from yesterday. Sophia was wearing one of Daniel's clean t-shirts under her blazer, having refused to go back to her penthouse for clothes. It should have looked ridiculous, but somehow she made it work. "Your son is amazing," she said as Marcus navigated through traffic. "He's everything," Daniel replied simply. "His mother? Gone. Couldn't handle the responsibility," she said. Sent divorce papers from California 2 years ago. I'm sorry. I'm not. Tommy deserves better than someone who could walk away from him. They rode in silence for a while, then Sophia said, I can't have children. Medical condition I've had since I was 20. The doctor said it was probably for the best, given my career ambitions. Daniel looked at her, saw the old pain in her eyes. Doctors can be idiots. Yes, she said softly. They can. Marcus pulled into the underground parking garage of Hale Industries, but instead of heading to the elevator, he led them to a security office Daniel hadn't seen before. 3 people were waiting, a woman in an FBI windbreaker, a man in an expensive suit who looked like a lawyer, and Derek Winters from the board. What's he doing here? Sophia demanded. Ms. Hale, the FBI agent said. I'm Special Agent Rivera. We need to discuss your kidnapping. I told you yesterday. We've had a breakthrough, Rivera interrupted. The man who attacked you in the elevator? He finally talked. He was hired by someone inside your company. Daniel saw Sophia's knuckles go white. Who? Rivera's eyes flicked to Derek. That's what we're here to determine, Mr. Winters came to us with information suggesting the conspiracy goes deeper than just one person. Derek stepped forward, and Daniel tensed, ready to move if needed. But Derek's usual smugness was gone, replaced by something that looked like fear. Sophia, I know we've had our differences, but this isn't about business. Someone on the board is trying to kill you, and I think I know who. If you knew, why didn't you? But because I wasn't sure. Because accusing someone without proof would have destroyed everything. But after yesterday, after that attack, Derek pulled out his phone, showed them a message. This was sent to me last night from a blocked number. The message was simple. You're next if you don't play along. Play along with what? Agent Rivera asked. The Kronos merger. Someone wants it to happen badly enough to kill for it, and they're not going to stop with Sophia. Do you know who sent this? Sophia asked. Derek hesitated, then nodded. I traced the metadata. It came from inside the building, from Victoria's office. The room went silent. Victoria Hamilton had been on the board for 10 years, was one of Sophia's earliest supporters when she became CEO. That's impossible, Sophia said, but Daniel heard the doubt in her voice. We need to bring her in for questioning, Agent Rivera said, but carefully. If she's involved, she might run. Or she might try to finish what she started, Marcus added grimly. There's a board meeting in an hour, Sophia said slowly. Emergency session about the attack yesterday. Everyone will be there, including Victoria. Perfect, Rivera said. We can... An explosion rocked the building. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red. Alarms started screaming. That came from above, Marcus said, already moving. The boardroom floor. They ran for the stairs, Daniel keeping Sophia close, while Rusty scouted ahead. As they climbed, the smell of smoke grew stronger. Other employees were evacuating, streaming down as they went up. Sophia, we should get you out, Daniel said. No, if someone's hurt... Another explosion, smaller but closer. The building shook. Through the stairwell windows, Daniel could see smoke pouring from the 40th floor. They burst onto the boardroom level to find chaos. Smoke filled the hallway. The sprinkler system was going off, creating an artificial rain that made it hard to see. Through the smoke, Daniel saw figures moving. There, Marcus pointed. Victoria Hamilton stood in the destroyed doorway of the boardroom, holding something in her hand. When she saw them, she smiled. Too late, she said, and Daniel realized what she was holding. A detonator. Victoria, don't, Sophia shouted, but Victoria just laughed. You never understood, did you? This was never about money. It was about power, about taking what you stole from me. I never stole anything from you. You stole everything. Victoria's composure cracked. I was supposed to be CEO. I worked for 20 years for that position. Then you came along with your pretty face and your revolutionary ideas, and the board chose you. You! Victoria, please, the merger will happen now. With you dead, the board will have no choice. And I'll be the one to shepherd it through. I'll be the hero who saved the company from your mismanagement. She raised the detonator, but Daniel was already moving. The gun was in his hand before he consciously decided to draw it. The shot was clean, hitting Victoria's hand. The detonator flew across the room. Victoria screamed, clutching her bleeding hand, then ran. Not toward the exit, but deeper into the smoke-filled floor. "I've got her," Agent Rivera said, pursuing with her weapon drawn. Daniel turned to check on Sophia, but she was already moving toward the boardroom. "There might be people inside." They followed her into the destroyed room. The conference table was in pieces, windows blown out, papers burning everywhere. But the room was empty except for one figure slumped in a chair at the far end. Richard, the silver-haired board member who'd tried to hug Sophia yesterday. His chest rose and fell weakly. "Richard!" Sophia ran to him, Daniel close behind. Blood soaked the old man's shirt from multiple pieces of shrapnel. "Sophia," Richard wheezed. "Tried to stop her. She's been planning this for months. The kidnapping was just the start." "Save your strength," Sophia said, pressing her hands against his wounds, trying to stop the bleeding. "No time." Richard gripped her hand with surprising strength. "The merger, it's not what you think. Kronos is a shell company. Chinese military behind it. Victoria sold us out for $100 million and a guarantee of power." "Jesus," Daniel breathed. "This was bigger than corporate rivalry. This was treason." "Evidence," Richard continued weakly. "My office safe. Code is your birthday." He looked at Sophia with fading eyes. "I voted for you, you know. Best decision I ever made. You're everything a leader should be." And then he was gone. Sophia sat back, Richard's blood on her hands, tears streaming down her face. Daniel pulled her up, pulled her close. "We have to go," he said gently. "The building's not safe." They made it to the stairwell just as another explosion rocked the building. This one was below them, maybe 20th floor. The whole structure groaned. "She's trying to bring down the building," Marcus said in horror. They ran down the stairs, Daniel half carrying Sophia when her injured leg gave out. Other employees were fleeing in panic now. The explosions kept coming, each one strategically placed to cause maximum structural damage. They'd made it to the 10th floor when the stairwell above them collapsed. Concrete and steel rained down, blocking their retreat. The only way was forward, but smoke was getting thicker. "This way." Daniel found a door to the 10th floor, kicked it open. The office space beyond was filled with smoke, but not yet on fire. "We can take the other stairwell!" They ran through the maze of cubicles, Rusty leading the way with his superior senses. Behind them, the building continued to groan and shake. Through the windows, Daniel could see fire trucks arriving, people streaming out of the building. "There!" Marcus pointed to an exit sign. But as they reached the door, it burst open. Victoria stood there, her hand wrapped in a bloody makeshift bandage, a gun in her good hand. "You always had to be the hero, didn't you, Sophia?" she said, raising the weapon. Daniel moved, but Rusty was faster. The dog launched himself at Victoria, jaws clamping on her gun arm. The weapon fired, the bullet going wide, shattering a window. Victoria screamed, trying to shake Rusty off, but the dog held on. Agent Rivera appeared behind Victoria, weapon drawn. "Drop the gun!" Victoria laughed, a sound devoid of sanity. "We're all going to die anyway. I made sure of it." Another explosion, this one directly below them. The floor buckled. Cracks spread across the ceiling like lightning. "The building's coming down!" Marcus shouted. Daniel grabbed Sophia, Marcus grabbed Victoria despite her struggles, and they all ran for the stairwell. They had maybe minutes before the structure failed completely. The descent was a nightmare. Emergency lights failing, stairs cracking under their feet, the building screaming its death throes around them. Victoria had stopped fighting, seemed almost catatonic. Other survivors joined them, everyone moving in desperate unison toward survival. They burst out of the building into chaos. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cars, news vans. Someone wrapped a blanket around Sophia. Someone else was trying to tend to Daniel's cuts. When had he gotten cut? Everything was noise and smoke and confusion. And then, with a sound like the world ending, the top half of the Hale Industries building collapsed. Daniel pulled Sophia against him, shielding her from the debris and dust that billowed out like a pyroclastic flow. When it cleared, when the screaming stopped, and the dust settled, 40 stories had become 20. "My God," Sophia whispered. "All those people." "Most got out," Agent Rivera said, Victoria in handcuffs beside her. "The fire department confirmed. The explosion started high and worked down. It gave people time. She wanted me to watch, Sophia said, understanding dawning in her eyes. She wanted me to see everything I built destroyed before I died. Victoria smiled then, a broken expression on her dust-covered face. You took everything from me. I wanted to return the favor. As the FBI led Victoria away, Sophia turned to Daniel. It's over. But looking at the destroyed building, at the emergency vehicles, at the chaos that had engulfed their lives, Daniel wasn't so sure. This felt less like an ending and more like the beginning of something larger and more dangerous. Mr. Hayes, Agent Rivera approached them. We're going to need statements from both of you. And Ms. Hale, we'll need to put you in protective custody until we can determine if Victoria was working alone. She comes with me, Daniel said firmly. Mr. Hayes, with all due respect, you're not equipped. I kept her alive when your systems failed, Daniel interrupted. She stays with me. Rivera looked like she wanted to argue, but Sophia spoke up. Where Daniel goes, I go. That's non-negotiable. The agent sighed. Fine. But we're posting agents outside wherever you're staying. As they walked away from the ruins of Hale Industries, Sophia's hand found Daniel's. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything. It's not over, he warned. Victoria might have had help, and that stuff about Kronos, about Chinese military. I know. She squeezed his hand. But right now I'm alive. You're alive. Rusty's alive. That's what matters. They climbed into Marcus's SUV, Rusty between them, and drove away from the devastation. In the distance, sirens continued to wail, and news helicopters circled like vultures. The story would be everywhere within hours. The attempted murder of Sophia Hale, the destruction of a landmark building, the betrayal that went to the heart of corporate America. But in the car, there was just quiet. Sophia leaned against Daniel's shoulder, exhausted. Rusty laid his head on her lap. And Daniel thought about Tommy, safe with Mrs. Chen, probably watching cartoons and eating cookies, blissfully unaware of how close they'd all come to disaster. Daniel? Sophia said sleepily. Can we go home? He knew she meant his apartment, not her penthouse. Knew she was choosing his cramped, water-stained world over her gilded cage. It should have felt like a victory, but all Daniel felt was the weight of responsibility. He'd saved her from a trunk, from an elevator attack, from a building collapse. But could he save her from whatever came next? As they drove through the city streets, past the normal people living their normal lives, Daniel made a decision. He would protect Sophia Hale. Not because she was rich or powerful, but because she'd sat at his tiny table and eaten soup with his son. Because she'd cried in his apartment and let his dog comfort her. Because somewhere between pulling her from that trunk and watching her building fall, she'd stopped being an assignment and become something else entirely. What exactly she'd become, Daniel wasn't ready to name. But as she dozed against his shoulder, trusting him completely, he knew his life had changed irrevocably. There was before Sophia and after Sophia, and there was no going back. The question now was whether any of them would survive what came next. The apartment felt smaller with FBI agents stationed in the hallway, their presence a constant reminder that Victoria's arrest hadn't ended the danger. Daniel stood at his window, watching the unmarked sedan parked across the street, while Sophia slept on the sofa bed, still wearing his old t-shirt, Rusty curled protectively at her feet. It had been 3 days since the building collapse. 3 days of FBI interviews, medical checkups, and reporters camped outside trying to get a glimpse of the billionaire CEO hiding in a laundromat apartment. Mrs. Chen had taken to chasing them off with a broom, muttering in Mandarin about vultures and parasites. Daddy? Tommy's voice came from the bedroom doorway. Is Ms. Sophie going to live with us forever? Daniel turned from the window, his heart aching at the hope in his son's voice. Tommy had taken to Sophia immediately, showing her his drawings, reading her his favorite books, even sharing his secret stash of Halloween candy from last year. I don't know, buddy. She's just staying until it's safe for her to go home. But what if it's never safe? What if the bad people keep trying to hurt her? Before Daniel could answer, Sophia stirred on the sofa bed, her eyes opening slowly. The bruises were fading to yellow-green now, making her look less like a victim and more like a survivor. Morning, she said, her voice still rough with sleep. Ms. Sophie! Tommy ran to her, bouncing on his toes. Guess what? Mrs. Chen is teaching me to make dumplings. Want to help? I'd love to, Sophia said, sitting up carefully. Her ribs were still tender from the ordeal, but she was moving better each day. But first, coffee. Please tell me your dad has coffee. He does, Tommy said proudly. But it's the cheap kind, not like the fancy coffee you probably drink. Tommy, Daniel warned, but Sophia laughed. The cheap kind is perfect. After everything that's happened, normal is exactly what I need. As Daniel made coffee in the tiny kitchen, his phone buzzed. Marcus. We have a problem, Marcus said without preamble. The FBI found evidence in Victoria's apartment. She wasn't working alone. Daniel stepped into the hallway, lowering his voice. Who else is involved? That's the problem. The evidence suggests at least 3 other board members, but we can't determine which ones. And there's something else. Someone accessed Sophia's personal accounts yesterday. They've frozen her assets. What? How is that possible? Victoria had help from inside the banking system. Sophia's effectively broke until the FBI can sort this out. All her accounts, her properties, everything's been seized pending investigation. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. Does she know? Not yet. I thought you should tell her. Me? Why me? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Evidence suggests at least 3 other board members, but we can't determine which ones. And there's something else. Someone accessed Sophia's personal accounts yesterday. They've frozen her assets. What? How is that possible? Victoria had help from inside the banking system. Sophia's effectively broke until the FBI can sort this out. All her accounts, her properties, everything's been seized pending investigation. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. Does she know? Not yet. I thought you should tell her. Me? Why me? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Because you're the only person she trusts right now. And because she'll need you more than ever when she finds out she's lost everything. Daniel hung up and returned to find Sophia teaching Tommy how to fold a paper airplane from newspaper, both of them laughing as it crashed into the wall. The scene was so domestic, so normal, that for a moment he forgot about the danger, about the money, about everything except how right she looked there in his humble home. Sophie, we need to talk, he said quietly. She looked up, her smile fading at his expression. What's happened? Tommy, why don't you go see if Mrs. Chen needs help with those dumplings? But I want to... Go on, buddy. We'll be over in a minute. Once Tommy was gone, Daniel sat beside Sophia on the sofa bed. Marcus called. The FBI found evidence that Victoria had accomplices. I figured as much. She couldn't have orchestrated all of this alone. There's more. Someone's frozen your assets. All of them. Sophia went very still. Everything? Everything. Until the FBI investigation is complete, you have no access to any of your money or properties. He expected anger, panic, maybe tears. Instead, Sophia started laughing. Not the polite laugh of a CEO at a cocktail party, but deep, genuine laughter that shook her whole body. Sophie? Don't you see how perfect this is? She said between laughs. I spent my whole life accumulating wealth, building an empire, and now I'm literally penniless. The woman who owns 12 houses is living on a sofa bed in an apartment that probably violates several health codes. This isn't funny. You've lost everything. No, she said, suddenly serious, taking his hand. I lost everything when they locked me in that trunk. The money, the company, the power, none of it mattered when I thought I was going to die alone in the dark. But then you opened that trunk and suddenly I had something I'd never had before. What's that? People who give a damn. She squeezed his hand. Your son sharing his candy with me is worth more than all the money in my frozen accounts. Mrs. Chen forcing me to eat because I'm too skinny is worth more than any 5-star restaurant. And you sleeping on the floor to give me the sofa bed, standing between me and danger without hesitation. Daniel, I've had bodyguards who cost $1,000 a day who wouldn't have done what you've done for free. Not exactly free. You're paying me to be your bodyguard, remember? With what money? She asked wryly. Face it, Daniel. You're protecting me now because you want to, not because I'm paying you. Before he could respond, someone knocked on the door. Not a polite knock, but an aggressive pounding that made Rusty growl. "Mr. Hayes, open up! FBI!" Daniel opened the door to find Agent Rivera and two other agents, their faces grim. "What's wrong?" "We need to move you immediately, both of you." "Why? What's happened?" "Richard's office safe, the one he mentioned before he died. We opened it. The evidence inside. This conspiracy is bigger than we thought. It goes all the way to—" A window shattered. Daniel heard the distinctive whistle of a bullet passing close. Then Agent Rivera was falling, blood blooming on her shoulder. More windows exploded as automatic weapons fire raked the building. "Down! Everyone down!" Daniel shouted, pulling Sophia to the floor as bullets tore through the walls. The two other agents were returning fire, but they were pinned. "The roof!" one agent shouted. "They're on the adjacent building!" Daniel's mind raced. The apartment was a kill box. They had to move. "The laundromat," he said to Sophia. There's a service tunnel in the basement. It connects to the subway maintenance tunnels." "How do you sit—" "Not important now. Can you run?" She nodded, though her face was pale with fear. "When I say go, we run for the door. Rusty, guard." The dog barked acknowledgement, ready to defend. "Go!" They burst from the apartment, Daniel half carrying Sophia, as bullets chased them down the hallway. Mrs. Chen's door opened, and the elderly woman appeared with, of all things, a shotgun. "Mrs. Chen, no!" But the tough old woman was already firing at the windows, providing cover. "Go! Take back stairs!" They ran, taking the narrow service stairs 3 at a time. Behind them, the gunfire intensified. Daniel could hear boots on the roof now. The attackers were coming. The laundromat was empty, its machines silent for once. Daniel kicked open the basement door, leading Sophia into the darkness below. The basement was a maze of old pipes and machinery, most of it decades old. "Here!" Daniel pushed aside a rusted water heater, revealing a narrow opening. It was used during Prohibition to move bootleg liquor. The current owner doesn't even know it exists. "How do you—" "I explore when I can't sleep. Come on." They crawled through the tunnel, Rusty behind them, the sound of pursuit growing closer. The tunnel opened into a larger maintenance area, part of the old subway system that had been abandoned when the new lines were built. "Which way?" Sophia asked. Daniel oriented himself, then pointed left. "That leads to the active tracks about a mile down. We can—" Voices echoed from the tunnel behind them. Their pursuers had found the entrance. They ran through the darkness, Daniel's small flashlight, their only guide. The tunnels were a labyrinth, branching and intersecting randomly. Water dripped from the ceiling, and things scurried away from their footsteps. "Daniel!" Sophia gasped, her injured ribs making it hard to breathe. "I can't—" "Yes, you can. Just a little farther." They rounded a corner, and Daniel's heart sank. The tunnel had collapsed, probably years ago, blocking their path. Shit. "We're trapped," Sophia said, and for the first time since he'd found her, she sounded defeated. "No, there's another way." Daniel remembered exploring these tunnels as a teenager, back when he was angry at the world and looking for places to hide from his drunk father. "Through here." He led them into a side passage, barely wide enough for them to squeeze through. It opened into what had once been a station, abandoned since the 1940s. The platform was covered in decades of dust and debris, but the tracks were clear. The third rail might still be live, Daniel warned. "Stay on the platform." They moved carefully through the ghost station, their footsteps echoing in the vast space. Old advertisements from the 40s still clung to the walls, selling war bonds and cigarettes to commuters who'd been dead for decades. A sound made them freeze. Footsteps, multiple sets, coming from the tunnel they'd just left. "Hide," Daniel whispered, pulling Sophia behind a rusted pillar. 3 men emerged onto the platform, all carrying military-grade weapons. They moved like soldiers, checking corners, communicating with hand signals. "They came this way," one said, his accent distinctly not American. "Russian, maybe, or Eastern European." "The boss wants her alive if possible," another said, "but dead is acceptable if necessary." "And the man?" "Collateral damage." Daniel felt Sophia tense beside him. He put a hand on her arm, keeping her still. 3 armed professionals against him with just his pistol. The odds were shit. But then Rusty did something unexpected. The dog emerged from their hiding spot, limping, whimpering like he was hurt. The men relaxed slightly, seeing just an injured animal. It's just a dog, one said, lowering his weapon. That's when Rusty struck. The dog launched himself at the nearest man, all injuries forgotten, his jaws finding the man's gun arm. Daniel used the distraction, stepping out and firing twice. One man down. The second was turning when Sophia, of all people, hit him with a piece of rebar she'd found, dropping him cold. The third man, the one Rusty had attacked, was trying to shake the dog off when Daniel's fist connected with his jaw. The man went down hard, his head hitting the platform with a crack. Holy shit, Daniel breathed. Sophie, that was terrifying, she finished, dropping the rebar with shaking hands. I've never hit anyone before. You did great. He checked the unconscious men, zip-tying their hands with their own restraints. But we need to move. There might be more. They continued through the abandoned station, eventually finding a maintenance ladder that led up to a grate in Central Park. Daniel pushed it open, and they emerged into sunlight, startling a group of joggers. Is that? One of them started, recognizing Sophia despite the dirt and dust. Run, Daniel said simply, and they did, disappearing into the park with Rusty at their heels. They needed somewhere safe, somewhere their enemies wouldn't think to look, and Daniel knew exactly where to go. St. Augustine's Church was holding noon mass when they slipped in through the back door. Father Miguel took one look at them and ushered them into his private office without a word. Daniel, what? Father, we need sanctuary, real sanctuary, like in the old days. Miguel's face grew serious. Who's after you? Professional killers. They've already hit my apartment, probably have people watching Sophia's penthouse, and the FBI can't seem to stop them. The FBI agents at your apartment? One was shot. I don't know how bad. Mrs. Chen was providing cover fire when we ran. Mrs. Chen has a shotgun? Sophia asked, momentarily distracted. Mrs. Chen was in the Vietnamese army before she immigrated, Daniel explained. She doesn't talk about it, but yeah, she knows her way around weapons. Father Miguel locked the office door, then moved a bookshelf to reveal a hidden room. This was used to hide people during the Underground Railroad, then again during the draft riots. You'll be safe here. The hidden room was small but clean, with 2 cots, water, and basic supplies. As they settled in, Daniel's phone rang. Unknown number. Yeah? Mr. Hayes? An unfamiliar male voice, accented. Chinese, maybe. You have something we want. Who is this? Someone who can end all of this. The attempts on Ms. Hale's life, the frozen assets, everything. All we want is the information from Richard's safe. I don't have... Please don't lie. We know the FBI shared the contents with Ms. Hale before our intervention. She has the account numbers, the names, everything we need. Daniel looked at Sophia, who shook her head. She had no idea what they were talking about. She doesn't know anything about that. Then she's of no use to us alive. The line went dead. They think I have something from Richard's safe, Sophia said. But Agent Rivera never got to tell us what was in it before. Before she was shot. Daniel paced the small room. Whatever it is, it's worth killing for. Richard said Kronos was a shell company for the Chinese military. Maybe he had proof? More than that. Account numbers, the caller said. Names. Daniel stopped pacing. Sophie, think. Did Richard ever give you anything? Any documents, USB drives, anything? No, nothing. Wait. Her hand went to her neck where a simple pendant hung on a chain. He gave me this for my birthday last year, said it was an antique, belonged to his mother. Daniel examined the pendant. It looked ordinary, just an old locket. But when he opened it, instead of photos, there was a tiny USB drive. Son of a bitch, he breathed. Richard gave you the evidence months ago. He knew, Sophia said wonderingly. He knew Victoria was planning something. We need to get this to the FBI, but they probably got people watching the field office. I might be able to help with that, Father Miguel said from the doorway. I have connections with the U.S. Marshals. They can arrange a secure pickup. While Miguel made calls, Daniel and Sophia sat on one of the cots, exhaustion finally catching up with them. I'm sorry, Sophia said quietly, for all of this. You and Tommy could have been killed because of me. Stop, Daniel said firmly. None of this is your fault. You didn't ask to be kidnapped. You didn't ask for Victoria to betray you, and you sure as hell didn't ask for Chinese intelligence to target you. But if you hadn't found me, then you'd be dead, and they'd still be after whoever had that USB drive, which, by the way, they would have eventually figured out was you. Sophia leaned against his shoulder, and Daniel felt that dangerous stirring in his chest again. This woman, this brilliant, brave, broken woman, was becoming something more than just someone to protect. Daniel? She said softly. When this is over, when I get my money back, I want to do something for you and Tommy. We don't need... I know you don't need it, but I want to. You gave me something money can't buy, a real family, even if just for a few days. Let me give something back. What did you have in mind? A house. A real house, with a yard for Rusty and a room for Tommy's dinosaur collection, maybe near a good school. Sophie, and I want to be part of it, she said in a rush, not as your employer or some rich benefactor, but as family. If you'll have me. Tommy already asked if I could be his aunt. Daniel's heart was pounding. Just his aunt? Sophia pulled back to look at him, those green eyes searching his face. What are you asking? I'm asking what happens when this is over. Do you go back to your penthouse and your corporate life, and I go back to being nobody? Or we figure out how two people from completely different worlds can build something together, something real. Before Sophia could answer, Father Miguel returned. The marshals will be here in 20 minutes. But Danielle, there's something else. Your neighbor, Mrs. Chen, she's in the hospital. She was shot during the attack. Daniel felt like he'd been punched. Tough, invincible Mrs. Chen, who'd watched Tommy countless times, who'd fed them when money was tight, who'd stood up to armed killers with an ancient shotgun. How bad? Critical but stable. She's at Presbyterian. I have to... You can't, Miguel said gently. They'll be watching the hospital, but I can go, check on her, make sure she has everything she needs. Tommy, Daniel said suddenly. Where's Tommy? Safe. The FBI got him from school, took him to a secure location. He's with Agent Rivera. She's okay, by the way. Shoulder wound, but she'll recover. Relief flooded through him. His boy was safe. The marshals are here, Miguel announced, looking out the window. Time to go. They were escorted to a nondescript government building downtown, where a team of FBI tech specialists were waiting. The USB drive contained everything: bank accounts linking Victoria to Chinese intelligence, names of other conspirators, details of the plan to use Kronos to funnel American technology to Beijing. This is huge, the lead investigator said. We're talking about one of the biggest corporate espionage cases in U.S. history. Who else was involved? Sophia demanded. From your board? Derek Winters, surprisingly, was clean. He was actually trying to stop it, which is why Victoria tried to frame him. But 3 others were taking Chinese money: Patricia Chen, Robert Morrison, and James Whitman. Sophia sank into a chair. I trusted them. I trusted all of them. They've all been arrested, the investigator continued. And with this evidence, your assets will be unfrozen within days. What about the people trying to kill us? Daniel asked. Chinese intelligence operatives. They're probably already on their way out of the country now that we have the evidence. Without it, Sophia's worthless to them. So it's over? Sophia asked. The immediate threat? Yes. There will be trials, testimony needed, but the danger has passed. They were driven to a safe house to reunite with Tommy, who launched himself at Daniel the moment he saw him. Daddy! The FBI agents let me ride in their car with the sirens, and they showed me their badges, and one of them bought me ice cream. That's great, buddy. Daniel held his son tight, breathing in the little boy's smell of him, grateful beyond words that he was safe. Ms. Sophie, Tommy hugged her next. Are you okay? You're all dirty. I'm okay now, Sophia said, hugging him back. We're all okay. That night, in the safe house, after Tommy had fallen asleep between them on the couch while watching a movie, Daniel and Sophia finally had a chance to talk. You never answered my question, Daniel said quietly, about what happens next. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, her fingers absently stroking Tommy's hair. I've been thinking about that. About everything, really. Almost dying has a way of clarifying what's important. And I don't want to go back to my old life, not completely. The company needs rebuilding, literally and figuratively, but I don't want to do it alone. I want... She paused, gathering courage. I want Sunday dinners with you and Tommy. I want to help with homework and go to Little League games. I want to wake up somewhere that feels like home, not a museum. Sophie, I know it's fast. I know we're from different worlds. But Daniel, you see me. Not the CEO, not the millionaire, just me. And I see you, not just a bodyguard or a single dad struggling to get by, but a good man who would do anything for the people he loves. Daniel's hand found hers over Tommy's sleeping form. It won't be easy. The media will have a field day. Billionaire CEO falls for bodyguard. Let them talk. I faced down kidnappers, assassins, and a collapsing building. I think I can handle some gossip. And Tommy already asked if I could be his mom, Sophia said softly. I told him that was up to you. Daniel's throat tightened. What about kids? You said you couldn't. I can't have biological children. But Tommy needs a mom, and there are so many kids who need families. If you're open to it, maybe we could adopt. Give Tommy some siblings. You've really thought about this. I've had nothing but time to think, lying on your sofa bed, listening to you and Tommy in the morning, feeling safe for the first time in my adult life. I kept waiting for the catch, for the moment when you'd want something from me. Money, connections, power. But all you ever wanted was for me to be safe and happy. That's all I still want, Daniel said simply. Then let's try. Let's see if we can build something together. Not Sophia Hale, the CEO, and Daniel Hayes, the bodyguard, but just Sophie and Daniel figuring it out as we go. Daniel lifted their joined hands, kissed her knuckles gently. Okay. Okay? Okay, let's try, but I have conditions. Such as? I keep working, maybe not as your bodyguard, but something. I need to contribute. Head of security for the rebuilt Hale Industries? That works. What else? We live somewhere normal. Not a penthouse, not above a laundromat, but something in between. A house with a yard for Rusty, Sophia agreed. In a neighborhood with good schools and neighbors who actually talk to each other. And Sunday dinners with Mrs. Chen once she's better. Absolutely. They sat in comfortable silence, Tommy snoring softly between them, Rusty at their feet, the danger finally past. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would be trials, media attention, the challenge of merging two very different lives. But it was real, and it was theirs. Daniel? Sophia said sleepily. Thank you for opening that trunk. Thank you for being inside it, he replied, which made her laugh. That's a weird thing to be grateful for. Not really. It brought you to us, to me and Tommy. And Rusty, she added. And Rusty, he agreed. As they drifted off to sleep, still on the couch with Tommy between them, like the family they were becoming, Daniel thought about how strange life could be. A week ago, he'd been a nobody, scraping metal from junkyards to survive. Now he was planning a future with one of the most powerful women in America, who'd somehow chosen him and his small, imperfect life over everything else. The morning would bring new challenges. The media would descend once word got out about their relationship. The trials would be brutal. Rebuilding Hale Industries would take years. But tonight, in this safe house with his son and the woman who'd changed everything sleeping beside him, Daniel Hayes felt richer than he'd ever imagined possible. Not because of Sophia's money or status, but because he'd learned the truth that she'd discovered in that trunk. Sometimes being broken was the only way to let the light in. And sometimes, just sometimes, two broken people could build something whole together. Rusty's tail thumped once against the floor, as if in agreement, and Daniel smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow would come soon enough. Tonight, they were together, they were safe, and they were home. The courthouse steps were swarming with reporters when Daniel helped Sophia out of the SUV 6 weeks later. Camera flashes erupted like fireworks, and the shouted questions blended into an incomprehensible roar. Sophia wore a simple black suit that somehow made her look both vulnerable and powerful, her hand finding Daniel's as they climbed toward the entrance. Ms. Hale, how does it feel to face your attempted killer? Daniel, Is it true you're romantically involved? Will Hale Industries recover from this scandal? They pushed through without answering, FBI agents clearing a path. Inside the courthouse, the circus atmosphere continued, but at a lower volume. Victoria Hamilton's trial had become the most watched corporate crime case in decades, and everyone wanted their piece of the story. Tommy was safe at school with a security detail that Sophia had insisted on hiring, though Daniel suspected the 6-year-old was mostly excited about showing his classmates the cool agents who picked him up each day. Mrs. Chen was recovering well, already back in her apartment and complaining about the fuss everyone was making over what she called a little scratch. The bullet had missed anything vital, though Daniel suspected the tough old woman would have survived even if it hadn't. "You ready for this?" Daniel asked as they waited outside the courtroom. "I have to be," Sophia said, though her hand trembled slightly in his. "She tried to kill me. She destroyed my company's building. She got Richard killed. I need to look her in the eyes and show her she didn't break me." The courtroom was packed. Daniel recognized several board members, former employees, and enough security to stop a small army. Victoria sat at the defendant's table, her once perfect appearance now haggard, her designer suit replaced with a simple gray outfit. When Sophia entered, their eyes met across the room. Victoria smiled, a cold expression that made Daniel's protective instincts flare. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Amanda Chen, had warned them this would be brutal. Victoria's defense was claiming temporary insanity brought on by years of workplace discrimination and psychological manipulation by Sophia. It was bullshit, but it only took one sympathetic juror to hang the jury. Sophia was the first witness called. She walked to the stand with her head high, though Daniel could see the effort it took. The bailiff swore her in, and Amanda Chen began with the easy questions, establishing Sophia's role at Hale Industries, her relationship with Victoria before the kidnapping. "Ms. Hamilton was one of my most trusted advisors," Sophia said clearly. "I considered her a mentor, even a friend. When did that change?" "When I woke up in the trunk of a car with my wrists zip-tied and duct tape over my mouth." The defense attorney, a slick man named Morrison, objected immediately. "Your Honor, there's no direct evidence linking my client to the kidnapping." "Sustained," the judge said. "The jury will disregard." But the damage was done. Everyone in that courtroom was thinking about Sophia in that trunk, and Daniel saw several jurors glance sympathetically at her. The testimony continued for hours. Amanda Chen methodically walked through the events, the elevator attack, the building explosion, the evidence found in Victoria's apartment. Sophia answered each question calmly, though Daniel could see her exhaustion growing. Then it was Morrison's turn to cross-examine. "Ms. Hale, isn't it true that you were promoted to CEO over my client despite Ms. Hamilton having seniority? The board made that decision based on qualifications and vision for the company. But you actively campaigned for the position, didn't you? Made promises to board members? Undermined Ms. Hamilton's proposals?" "I presented my ideas. That's not undermining." "You systematically excluded her from important meetings, relegated her to lesser responsibilities." "That's not true." Morrison smiled, producing a stack of emails. "These communications suggest otherwise. Email after email where you specifically request that Ms. Hamilton not be included." Daniel watched Sophia's composure crack slightly. He knew those emails were probably taken out of context, but they looked damning. Those were sensitive negotiations. "So you admit to excluding her?" "I admit to making strategic decisions about who should be involved in specific discussions." The cross-examination went on for 2 more hours, Morrison painting Sophia as a manipulative climber who'd stolen Victoria's rightful position. It was character assassination, but it was effective. By the time Sophia stepped down from the stand, she looked shattered. During the lunch break, they found a quiet corner in a nearby restaurant. Sophia pushed food around her plate without eating. "Hey," Daniel said gently, "you did great up there." "He made me sound like a monster, like I deserved what happened." "Nobody deserves what happened to you, and the jury knows that." "Do they? Or do they see a rich woman who stepped on others to get ahead?" Daniel took her hand across the table. "They see a survivor. A woman who was brutalized and still had the strength to face her attacker. That matters." "Agent Rivera testifies this afternoon," Sophia said, changing the subject. Her testimony about the Chinese connection should shift focus back to the real crimes. But when they returned to court, Morrison had a surprise. He called a witness nobody had expected, Derek Winters. Derek took the stand looking uncomfortable, his usual corporate polish dulled by obvious stress. Morrison's questions started innocuously enough, establishing Derek's position on the board, his working relationship with both women. Mr. Winters, in your opinion, was Ms. Hale a fair and equitable leader? Derek hesitated. She was effective. That wasn't my question. Was she fair? She could be, demanding, uncompromising. Did you ever witness her belittle or humiliate Ms. Hamilton? Daniel saw Sophia tense beside him. Derek's eyes flicked to her, then away. There were incidents where Sophia was harsh in her criticism. Can you give us an example? Derek shifted in his seat. There was a board meeting last year. Victoria had proposed a community investment program. Sophia dismissed it as, and I quote, bleeding heart nonsense that would satisfy Victoria's need to feel important without accomplishing anything meaningful. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Sophia's knuckles went white as she gripped Daniel's hand. That's not what I said, she whispered. That's not how it happened. But Derek continued, painting a picture of a toxic work environment where Sophia had systematically undermined and humiliated Victoria. Some of it was true, Daniel could tell from Sophia's reactions, but twisted and exaggerated. Other parts were complete fabrication. Why is he doing this? Sophia whispered. The answer came during Amanda Chen's cross-examination. Mr. Winters, you've recently been promoted to interim CEO of Hale Industries, haven't you? Yes. And who supported that promotion? Derek's jaw tightened. The board voted. Who led the campaign for your promotion? I don't see how that's relevant. Answer the question, Mr. Winters. Victoria Hamilton, before her arrest. And did she promise you'd keep that position if you testified on her behalf today? Objection, Morrison shouted. Speculation. Withdrawn, Amanda said smoothly, but again, the damage was done. Agent Rivera's testimony that afternoon was damning for Victoria. She laid out the evidence methodically. The Chinese bank accounts, the communications planning Sophia's kidnapping, the bombs that had been strategically placed to destroy the building. This wasn't a crime of passion, Rivera stated firmly. This was a carefully orchestrated attempt at corporate espionage and murder. Ms. Hamilton was paid $15 million by Chinese intelligence to eliminate Ms. Hale and facilitate the Kronos merger. But surely my client was manipulated by these foreign agents, Morrison argued, a woman driven to desperation by workplace abuse, taken advantage of by professional spies. Your client initiated contact with them, Rivera countered. We have emails dating back 2 years where she offered to provide corporate secrets in exchange for help removing Ms. Hale. The prosecution then called a surprise witness, Marcus, Sophia's security chief. His testimony was brief but powerful. I've protected Ms. Hale for 5 years, he said. In that time, I've seen her face death threats, assassination attempts, and corporate sabotage. She's never once retaliated with violence. She's never sought revenge. Even now, knowing what Ms. Hamilton did, Sophia's primary concern has been for the employees who lost their jobs when the building was destroyed. But surely she must have done something to provoke such hatred, Morrison suggested. Marcus's expression hardened. The only thing Sophia Hale did was be better at her job than Victoria Hamilton, and for that, Hamilton tried to have her killed. The defense's case relied heavily on character witnesses for Victoria, colleagues who painted her as a devoted employee pushed too far, but their testimony felt hollow after the evidence of premeditation and the Chinese connection. Then Victoria herself took the stand. She looked smaller somehow, diminished in a way that might have evoked sympathy if Daniel hadn't seen the cold calculation in her eyes. Her testimony was a masterpiece of manipulation. She cried at the right moments. Her voice broke when describing her years of dedication to the company, her devastation when passed over for CEO. I gave everything to that company, she said, dabbing at her eyes. 20 years of my life. And then Sophia came along, young and beautiful and full of new ideas, and suddenly, nothing I'd done mattered. How did that make you feel? Morrison asked gently. Invisible. Worthless. like my entire career had been for nothing. And when you were contacted by foreign agents, I was vulnerable, desperate. They promised me recognition, respect, everything Sophia had taken from me. Daniel felt Sophia trembling with rage beside him. This woman had tried to murder her, had killed Richard, had destroyed a building full of innocent people, and now she was playing the victim. Amanda Chen's cross-examination was surgical in its precision. Ms. Hamilton, you claim you were manipulated by foreign agents. Can you explain this email sent 2 years before they contacted you, where you write, quote, Sophia Hale needs to be eliminated by any means necessary? Victoria's tears dried up instantly. That was taken out of context. The context being a private email to your personal account where you were planning her removal? I meant eliminated from the CEO position. Is that why the email continues with research into untraceable poisons? Silence. Ms. Hamilton, I was upset. Upset enough to research murder methods? You never intended to get caught, Amanda interrupted. But you absolutely intended to kill Sophia Hale. The evidence shows clear premeditation over years, not some momentary lapse in judgment. The rest of Victoria's testimony unraveled from there. Every excuse was countered with evidence, every emotional appeal undermined by facts. By the time she left the stand, her victim narrative was in tatters. Daniel was called to testify the next day. He dreaded this moment. Knowing his rough background would be scrutinized, his relationship with Sophia questioned, but as he took the oath, he caught Sophia's eyes and found strength there. Mr. Hayes, Amanda began, can you describe finding Ms. Hale in the trunk? Daniel told the story simply, without embellishment. The terror in Sophia's eyes, the blood on her wrists, the way she'd clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a world gone mad. You had no idea who she was? No, ma'am. She was just someone who needed help. When did you learn her identity? After we reached the church. Father Miguel asked who she was, and she told us. Did that change how you treated her? No, she was still hurt and terrified. Her bank account didn't change that. You've been criticized in the media for your relationship with Ms. Hale. Some say you're an opportunist, taking advantage of a vulnerable woman. Daniel's jaw tightened. People can say whatever they want. I know the truth. Which is that Sophia Hale is the strongest person I've ever met. She survived being kidnapped, tortured, hunted, and betrayed by people she trusted. She doesn't need me to protect her. She never did. She's protecting herself just fine. Then why stay with her? Daniel looked directly at Sophia. Because when you find someone who sees you for exactly who you are and chooses you anyway, you don't walk away from that. Rich or poor, CEO or janitor, she's Sophie, and she's worth fighting for. Morrison's cross-examination tried to paint him as a gold digger, highlighting his poverty, his lack of education, the convenience of their relationship. But Daniel had faced down armed killers. A lawyer in an expensive suit didn't scare him. Mr. Hayes, you went from unemployed to a $200,000 security position overnight. That must have been life-changing. You know what was life-changing? Teaching my son that good people help others without expecting rewards, showing him that integrity matters more than income. But surely the money. I was happier eating ramen with my boy than I've ever been eating at fancy restaurants. Money doesn't buy happiness, Mr. Morrison. It just buys stuff. And stuff doesn't matter when the people you love are in danger. The trial continued for 3 more days. More witnesses, more evidence, more attempts by Morrison to paint Victoria as a victim. But the truth was stronger than manipulation. During closing arguments, Amanda Chen stood before the jury with a photo of the destroyed Hale Industries building. This isn't about workplace rivalry or hurt feelings. This is about attempted murder, corporate espionage, and terrorism. Victoria Hamilton made a choice. She chose money over morality, revenge over reconciliation, murder over moving on. She nearly killed Sophia Hale. She did kill Richard Steinberg, and she destroyed millions of dollars in property and livelihoods. Don't let her tears fool you. She's not a victim. She's a criminal who got caught. Morrison's closing was emotional, begging the jury to consider Victoria's years of service, her mental state, the pressure she'd been under. But it felt hollow after everything they'd heard. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. 6 hours that felt like 6 years to Daniel as he sat with Sophia in a small room, waiting. Tommy was with Mrs. Chen, who'd promised to make his favorite dumplings regardless of the verdict. What if they acquit her? Sophia asked quietly. They won't. But what if they do? What if she goes free? Daniel pulled her close. Then we deal with it. Together. She can't hurt you anymore, Sophie. You're stronger than her, you've got more support than her, and you've got something she never had. What's that? People who love you for who you are, not what you can give them. A knock on the door interrupted them. The jury's back. They returned to a packed courtroom. Victoria stood as the jury foreman rose, her face expressionless. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. Sophia's hand found Daniel's. On the count of corporate espionage, we find the defendant guilty. Victoria's lawyer put a hand on her shoulder. On the count of domestic terrorism, we find the defendant guilty. The litany continued, guilty on all counts. Victoria would spend the rest of her life in prison. As the judge read the sentence, life without parole, Victoria turned to look at Sophia. For a moment, Daniel tensed, ready to protect, but Victoria just looked empty, defeated. Whatever had driven her to such extremes had finally burned out, leaving nothing but a hollow shell. I hope it was worth it, Sophia said quietly, not to Victoria but to herself. All that hatred, all that planning, I hope she got something from it because she lost everything else. Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy was even worse. But this time, Sophia stopped at the microphones. Ms. Hamilton was convicted today, not because of who she was, but because of what she did. She made choices that destroyed lives, including her own. I take no pleasure in her sentence. I only hope that the employees who lost their jobs when she destroyed our building can find some closure, and that Richard Steinberg's family can find peace. Ms. Hale, what's next for you? Sophia looked at Daniel, then back at the cameras. Rebuilding, not just the company, but my life. This experience taught me that success isn't measured in stock prices or board positions, but in the people who stand by you when everything falls apart. I'm grateful for my true friends, for the FBI agents who protected me, and especially for Daniel Hayes and his son Tommy, who reminded me that family isn't about blood or money, it's about choosing each other, every day, no matter what. Are you confirming your relationship with Mr. Hayes? I'm confirming that I love him, Sophia said simply, and that his 6-year-old son is the best thing that ever happened to me. Everything else is nobody's business but ours. They pushed through the crowd to the waiting SUV. As they drove away, Daniel saw Victoria being loaded into a prison transport, her hands cuffed, her empire of hatred in ruins. How do you feel? He asked Sophia. Free, she said, leaning against his shoulder. For the first time in my life, really free. That evening, they had dinner at Daniel's apartment. He still couldn't think of it as their apartment, even though Sophia had been living there for 2 months while her penthouse was being renovated. Tommy chattered about his day at school, Mrs. Chen complained about the reporters who'd tried to interview her, and Rusty begged for scraps under the table. It was normal. Beautifully, wonderfully normal. After Tommy was in bed, Daniel and Sophia sat on the fire escape, looking out at the city lights. The same city where he'd found her in a trunk, where she'd hidden in his tiny apartment, where they'd run through abandoned subway tunnels fleeing assassins. I've been thinking, Sophia said, about the company. Yeah? I want to restructure it, make it employee-owned with profit sharing and real worker representation on the board. No more plant closures to boost quarterly earnings. No more treating people as acceptable losses. The board will hate that. The old board would have, but I'm appointing a new board, starting with Mrs. Chen. Daniel nearly choked on his beer. Our Mrs. Chen? She ran a textile company in Vietnam before the war, did you know that? She's brilliant, just never had the chances here that she deserved. And you want her on the board of a multi-billion-dollar company? I want people who understand what it means to struggle, who know the value of a dollar and the cost of dignity. The old way of doing business nearly got me killed. Time for something new. Daniel pulled her closer. You're going to change the world, aren't you? Maybe. Or maybe I'll just build a company where people like you don't get thrown away when the numbers dip. People like me? Good people. Decent people. People who'd open a trunk to save a stranger without thinking about rewards. They sat in comfortable silence, the city humming around them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The company needed rebuilding, literally from the ground up. The other conspirators' trials were still pending. The media attention showed no signs of abating. But tonight, on a fire escape in a working-class neighborhood, a billionaire CEO and an unemployed single father had found something worth more than all the money in all the banks in the world. "I love you," Daniel said, the words coming easier now after weeks of practice. "I love you too," Sophia replied. "Thank you for saving me." "You saved yourself. I just opened the trunk." "No," she said seriously. "You opened so much more than that." A year later, the new Hale Industries building would rise from the ruins of the old, built with union labor and designed with input from every level of employee. Mrs. Chen would indeed join the board, becoming famous for her no-nonsense approach to corporate governance and her habit of bringing homemade dumplings to board meetings. Tommy would start calling Sophia Mom without anyone asking him to, the word slipping out one day and sticking. They would adopt 2 more children, siblings from foster care who needed exactly the kind of family that knew how to survive anything. Derek Winters would testify in the trials of the other conspirators, his shame at his false testimony against Sophia driving him to tell the complete truth. He would resign from the company and disappear into obscurity. But all of that was in the future. Tonight, there was just Daniel and Sophia and the city lights and the knowledge that sometimes the worst moments in life were just preparing you for the best ones. "Want to go inside?" Daniel asked as the night grew cold. "In a minute," Sophia said, snuggling closer. "I'm memorizing this." "Memorizing what?" "The moment when everything finally felt right." Daniel kissed the top of her head, breathing in the expensive shampoo she used mixed with the laundromat detergent that clung to everything in the apartment. It was a perfect metaphor for their life together, high and low, rich and poor, all mixed together into something uniquely theirs. Somewhere in the city, Victoria Hamilton sat in a federal prison cell, alone with the choices that had destroyed her life. But on that fire escape, 2 people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances were building something beautiful from the wreckage. And that, Daniel thought, was the best revenge of all. Not hatred or retribution, but happiness. Pure, simple, unexpected happiness. Rusty barked from inside, probably wanting his evening walk, and the spell broke. They climbed back through the window into their small apartment that somehow contained an entire universe of love and possibility. "Race you to see who can get Tommy's dinosaur book for bedtime story," Sophia said, already running toward the bedroom. "That's cheating! You got a head start!" Daniel laughed, chasing after her. Their laughter filled the apartment, drowning out the sirens and city noise, creating a bubble of joy in a world that had tried so hard to break them. They had won. Not the trial, though that mattered. Not the company, though that would recover. They had won something far more precious, a family forged in crisis, tested by fire, and stronger for having survived. And it had all started with a dog's curious nose and a muffled cry from the trunk of an abandoned car. The first snow of winter was falling when Daniel woke to find Sophia's side of the bed empty. It had been 3 months since the trial ended, 3 months of what should have been peace, but something had been off lately. Sophia would stare at nothing during dinner, jump at unexpected sounds, check the locks multiple times before bed. The trauma, Dr. Patel had warned them, didn't just disappear with a guilty verdict. Daniel found her in Tommy's room, watching their son sleep. She'd been doing this more often lately, as if reassuring herself that this new life was real. In the soft glow of the dinosaur nightlight, he could see tears on her cheeks. "Bad dreams again?" he asked quietly, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I was back in the trunk," she whispered. "But this time no one came. I screamed and screamed, but no one heard me." "But someone did hear you. I heard you." "I know, it's just, what if you hadn't been there that morning? What if you'd taken a different path? What if Rusty hadn't been curious?" Daniel turned her to face him. "Then someone else would have found you. The universe wasn't going to let Victoria win." "You don't know that." "I do. Because Tommy needed a mom, and I needed you, and you needed us. It had to happen." Before Sophia could respond, Tommy stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "Mom, Dad? Is everything okay?" The word mom still made Sophia's breath catch. She sat on the edge of his bed, smoothing his hair. Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just checking on you. I had a dream about the new building, Tommy said sleepily. It was made of glass and you could see the whole city, and there was a playground on the roof for all the workers' kids. A playground on the roof? Sophia smiled. That's not a bad idea. Really? Can we really do that? We can do anything, she said, kissing his forehead. Go back to sleep. As they returned to their bedroom, Daniel noticed Sophia pause at the window, checking the locks again. The new apartment was bigger than the old one, in a better neighborhood with proper security, but she still didn't feel safe. Not completely. Marcus called today, she said as they got back into bed. The last of Victoria's co-conspirators took a plea deal, 20 years. That's good news. Is it? 20 years for trying to sell our country's secrets? For helping plan my murder? It's better than them walking free. I know, I want to stop thinking about it, about her, but every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that trunk, or the building's collapsing, or someone's shooting at us. Daniel pulled her close. It takes time. That's what Dr. Patel says. How much time? It's been months, and I still feel broken. You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. The next morning brought a different kind of drama. They were having breakfast when Marcus arrived with an envelope that made Sophia's hands shake. What is it? Daniel asked. Test results, she said quietly. From the fertility specialist. Daniel's heart stopped. They'd been trying to adopt Tommy's foster siblings, 8-year-old Maya and 6-year-old Luis, but during the medical evaluation, Sophia had asked about her own condition. The doctors had run tests, said there might be new treatment since her original diagnosis. And? Sophia read the letter twice, then looked up with tears in her eyes. There's a chance, a small one, but with treatment, there's a chance I could carry a child. Tommy looked up from his cereal. You're going to have a baby? Maybe, Sophia said carefully. Would you like that? A little brother or sister? Can we still adopt Maya and Luis too? Of course. Then yes, I want all the siblings. Daniel reached across the table to take Sophia's hand. What do you want to do? I want to try. Is that selfish? When there are so many kids who need homes? It's not selfish to want to create life with the person you love, Mrs. Chen said from the doorway. None of them had heard her arrive for her weekly visit. Besides, you're already adopting too. You can do both. When did you get a key? Daniel asked. I've always had a key. You think I trust you two to remember to eat properly without supervision? She set down a container of soup. Now, tell me about these test results. As Sophia explained the medical possibilities, Daniel watched the hope bloom in her eyes. It was the first time in months she'd looked truly excited about the future, rather than just surviving the present. The phone rang, interrupting the discussion. Daniel answered, his expression darkening as he listened. That was the FBI, he said after hanging up. Victoria wants to meet with Sophia. She says she has information about other threats. Absolutely not, Marcus said immediately. Wait, Sophia said. What kind of information? She claims there's another conspiracy, someone else who wants you dead. She'll only talk to you directly. It's a trap, Marcus insisted, or a manipulation. She's trying to get in your head. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. I need to go. Sophie? No, Daniel. I need to face her. I need to show myself that she doesn't control me anymore. The federal prison was 2 hours away. Daniel drove while Sophia stared out the window, her hand in his. Tommy was at school. Maya and Luis were with their foster family for one more week before the adoption was finalized. It was just the two of them and the weight of what they were about to do. You don't have to do this, Daniel said for the 10th time. Yes, I do. You opened the trunk and let me out physically, but mentally, I'm still trapped there sometimes. Maybe seeing her locked up, powerless, will finally free me. But the prison was a gray monument to consequences, all concrete and razor wire. They went through multiple security checkpoints before being led to a small room with reinforced glass dividing it in half. Victoria was already there, wearing orange instead of designer suits, her once perfect hair now gray at the roots. She looked older, smaller, diminished. When she saw Sophia, something flickered in her eyes. Not hatred, not anger, but something almost like regret. "You came," Victoria said through the speaker. "You said you had information." "I do, but first I need to tell you something." Victoria leaned forward. "I'm sorry." Sophia's breath caught. "What?" "I'm sorry. Not for wanting the CEO position, not for fighting for what I thought was mine, but for what I became, for what I did to you. Prison gives you time to think, and I've had nothing but time. You tried to kill me. I know, and I have to live with that. But there's something you need to know. I wasn't the only one who wanted you gone. There's someone else, someone still out there." "Who?" Victoria hesitated. "Your ex-husband." Daniel felt Sophia go rigid beside him. "That's impossible. James has been in Europe for 5 years. We haven't had contact since the divorce." "He's been back for 6 months," Victoria said. "He contacted me before the kidnapping, offered to help. I turned him down because I didn't want to share the credit. But Sophia, he's obsessed. He believes you ruined his life, destroyed his career. His insider trading destroyed his career. That's not how he sees it. He blames you for reporting him to the SEC. In his mind, you chose the company over him. I chose the law over crime. And he's never forgiven you. I have letters he sent me. Guards are getting them now. He detailed plans, not just to kill you, but to destroy everything you love first." A guard entered with a manila envelope, which he passed through security to Sophia. Her hand shook as she read the letters inside. Daniel read over her shoulder, his blood running cold at the detailed violence described in neat handwriting. "These are dated 2 months ago," Sophia said, "after you were arrested. He was my backup plan. When I failed, he decided to take over." Victoria laughed bitterly. "I created a monster I couldn't control." "Why tell us now?" Daniel asked suspiciously. Victoria looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. "You're the one who found her?" "Yes." "Richard told me before he died that you carried Sophia out of the building, that you protected her without knowing who she was or what you'd gain." "So?" "So I've had 3 months to think about what that means, about the kind of person who helps strangers versus the kind who destroys them for personal gain." She turned back to Sophia. "I'm going to die in here. This is my coffin. But maybe, by warning you, I can balance the scales just a little." This doesn't make us even," Sophia said coldly. "I know, nothing will, but it's all I have to offer." They left the prison in silence, Sophia clutching the letters. In the car, she finally broke down, sobbing against Daniel's shoulder. "It's never going to end, is it? There's always going to be someone who wants to hurt me. Then we'll face them, together. James knows things about me that even you don't. Weaknesses, fears. He knows exactly how to hurt me. But he doesn't know me. He doesn't know Tommy or Mrs. Chen or Marcus. He doesn't know the family you've built, and that family won't let him near you." They drove straight to FBI headquarters, where Agent Rivera examined the letters with growing concern. "These are credible threats," she said. "We'll issue a warrant immediately, but Sophia, you need protection." "I have protection," Sophia said, looking at Daniel. "With all due respect, Mr. Hayes isn't equipped to handle someone like James Crawford. The man has resources, connections, and according to these letters, nothing left to lose." "Then we'll be careful, but I'm not going back into hiding. I have a company to run, children to adopt, a life to live." Rivera sighed. "At least let me assign a detail." "Fine, but discreet. I don't want Maya and Luis scared when they come home." That evening, they gathered everyone who mattered. Mrs. Chen, Marcus, Father Miguel, even Tommy's teacher, Miss Rodriguez, who'd become a friend. Daniel explained the situation while Sophia sat quietly, still processing. "So this ex-husband wants revenge?" Mrs. Chen said bluntly. "Then we give him something else to think about." "Like what?" Marcus asked. "Like a united front. He expects Sophia to be isolated, vulnerable. Instead, he finds a fortress of people who love her." "That's beautiful, Mrs. Chen, but not exactly practical," Father Miguel said gently. "Isn't it? This James, he's counting on fear, but love is stronger than fear. Always has been." Tommy, who was supposed to be in bed, appeared in the doorway. Is someone trying to hurt Mom again? Sophia opened her arms, and he ran to her. Someone's made threats, baby, but we're safe. Because Dad will protect us? Because we'll all protect each other, Daniel said, ruffling his son's hair. Even me? Especially you. You're the bravest Hayes man I know. Over the next week, life took on a strange normalcy despite the underlying threat. Sophia went to work with her security detail, Daniel continued overseeing security for the rebuilding project, and Tommy started planning where Maya and Luis would sleep in their apartment. It was Thursday afternoon when everything changed. Daniel was at the construction site when his phone rang. Not his regular phone, but the emergency one only 5 people had the number for. Daniel? Sophia's voice was strange, controlled, but with an edge of panic. What's wrong? He's here, in my office. James is here. Daniel's blood went cold. Where's your security? He got past them somehow. He says he just wants to talk, but Daniel, he has a gun. I'm on my way. Keep him talking. Don't provoke him. He wants me to leave with him. Says if I don't, he'll go after Tommy. Sophie, listen to me. You don't leave that office. Security will... They don't know he's here. He came in through the construction zone, through the areas that aren't finished yet. Daniel, I'm scared. I know, but you're stronger than him. You survived Victoria. You survived the trunk. You can survive this. I'm coming. Daniel was already running, Marcus beside him as they raced through the half-built floors of the new Hale Industries building. The construction elevator seemed to take forever, each floor passing like an eternity. How did he get past security? Marcus demanded. Doesn't matter now. What matters is getting to her. They burst onto the executive floor to find it eerily quiet. Sophia's assistant was at her desk, working normally, unaware of the danger behind the closed office doors. Daniel put a finger to his lips, motioning for Marcus to go around to the other entrance. Then he carefully opened the door. James Crawford stood by the windows, a pistol held casually at his side. He was handsome in that polished way that had probably attracted Sophia once, with silver hair and an expensive suit, but his eyes were wild, desperate. Ah, the new boyfriend, James said without turning, the hero who saved her from the trunk. Tell me, Daniel, does she still have nightmares? Does she still cry out in her sleep? Let her go, Daniel said evenly. Whatever happened between you is history. History? James laughed bitterly. She destroyed my life and you call it history? You destroyed your own life, Sophia said from behind her desk. She was pale but steady, every inch the CEO despite the gun in the room. You chose to break the law. Well, I chose to make us rich. Everything I did was for us, for our future. Our future? You were stealing from the company, from the employees' pension funds. Details, money that would have been repaid once the deals went through. That's not how the law works, James. The law. He spat the word. You chose the law over your husband. And for what? So you could play CEO? So you could have the power all to yourself? Daniel moved slowly, putting himself between James and Sophia. She didn't choose anything. You made choices that had consequences. Shut up! James swung the gun toward Daniel. You don't know anything about our life, our marriage. She was mine first. Mine. I was never yours, Sophia said quietly. That was the problem, wasn't it? You couldn't own me, couldn't control me, so you tried to destroy me. I loved you. You loved the idea of me. The trophy wife who'd support your ambitions. When I became my own person, with my own goals, you couldn't handle it. So you replaced me with this? James gestured dismissively at Daniel. A nobody? A janitor playing bodyguard? He's worth 10 of you, Sophia said fiercely. He knows how to love without owning, protect without controlling. James's face contorted with rage. He raised the gun, pointing it directly at Daniel. Then maybe I should remove him from the equation. Everything happened at once. Sophia screamed. Daniel dove to the side. Marcus burst through the other door, and Rusty, who'd somehow followed them up, launched himself at James with a snarl. The gun went off, the bullet shattering the window behind where Daniel had been standing. James went down under Rusty's weight, the weapon spinning across the floor. Daniel kicked it away while Marcus restrained James, who was screaming incoherently about betrayal and revenge. It's over, Daniel said, pulling Sophia into his arms. It's really over this time. But James laughed, blood running from where Rusty had bitten him. It's never over. Even from prison, I'll find a way. I'll never stop. Never. Yes, you will, Sophia said, stepping out of Daniel's embrace. She walked over to where James lay restrained and knelt beside him. You'll stop because you have nothing left. No money, no connections, no power. You're going to prison, just like Victoria. And just like her, you'll be forgotten. You bitch! No, she interrupted. I'm a survivor, and I'm done being afraid of you. The FBI arrived within minutes, taking James away as he continued to scream threats. Agent Rivera looked exhausted as she took their statements. How did he get in? She asked. Construction access, Marcus explained. He must have been studying the building plans, found a way through the unfinished sections. We'll need to review all security protocols. We'll handle it, Daniel said. But first, I'm taking Sophia home. I have meetings? Sophia started. Which can wait. You've just faced down your ex-husband with a gun. You get to take the rest of the day off. As they left the building, Sophia was quiet. Daniel could feel her processing, working through what had just happened. They picked up Tommy from school, his chatter about his day a welcome return to normalcy. Maya and Luis are coming tomorrow, he announced excitedly. Miss Rodriguez says I can bring them for show and tell. That's wonderful, baby, Sophia said, but Daniel could see her mind was elsewhere. That night, after Tommy was asleep, they sat on their new balcony, the city spread out before them. The emergency foster placement had been approved, and tomorrow, 2 more children would join their family. Are you okay? Daniel asked. I faced him, Sophia said wonderingly. I looked him in the eyes and wasn't afraid. Well, not as afraid as I thought I'd be. You were incredible. I had backup. You, Marcus, Rusty. I wasn't alone. You'll never be alone again. Sophia turned to him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. When he pointed that gun at you, I thought, I can't lose you, Daniel. I can't. You won't. You can't promise that. Watch me. He took her hands. I promise I will always fight to come home to you. Always. Even if more ex-husbands show up, or disgruntled board members, or Chinese spies? Even if the entire world lines up against us. Sophia laughed, the sound shaky but real. We do seem to attract trouble. Or maybe we just attract each other, and trouble is jealous. She leaned against his shoulder and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. 2 traumatized children who needed love and stability, a company still rebuilding, the trials of James and the remaining conspirators. But it would also bring joy. Tommy's excitement at becoming a big brother, Maya and Luis getting a real home, the groundbreaking for the children's playground on the roof of the new building. Daniel, Sophia said sleepily. Yeah? Thank you for not being a knight in shining armor. What? Knights in shining armor rescue damsels and ride off into the sunset. You rescued me and then stuck around for the messy parts. The nightmares, the trials, the crazy ex-husbands. That's better than any fairy tale. Well, I'm not exactly prince material. No, she agreed. You're better. You're real. As they prepared for bed, checking on Tommy one more time, making sure the room for Maya and Luis was ready, Daniel thought about how much had changed in less than a year. He'd gone from a desperate man searching for scrap metal to a father of 3, partner to a CEO, protector of a family he'd never imagined having. The trunk that had held Sophia prisoner had actually contained their future, wrapped in fear and pain, but ultimately leading to something beautiful. Tomorrow, when Maya and Luis arrived with their small bags and enormous eyes, another chapter would begin. They were children who'd been thrown away, just like Daniel had been thrown away by the factory, just like Sophia had been thrown away by those who were supposed to protect her. But thrown away didn't mean worthless. Sometimes it just meant waiting for the right person to recognize your value. Daniel? Sophia called from the bathroom. I've been thinking about the fertility treatments. Yeah? I want to wait until Maya and Luis are settled, until they feel secure. They need all our attention right now. Daniel joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind as they looked at their reflection in the mirror. They looked tired but happy, battle-worn but victorious. We have time, he he said. All the time in the world, she agreed. The next morning came with chaos. Tommy was up at dawn, too excited to sleep. He'd arranged and rearranged the toys he'd picked out for his new siblings, practiced saying "welcome home" in Spanish Mrs. Chen had been teaching him, and asked every 5 minutes when they were arriving. When the social worker's car finally pulled up, Daniel felt Sophia's hand slip into his, squeezing tight. Maya emerged first, 8 years old with dark hair and suspicious eyes, holding the hand of Luis, who was 6 and clutching a worn teddy bear. "Hi," Tommy said, suddenly shy. "I'm Tommy. I'm your brother now." Maya looked at him, then at Daniel and Sophia, clearly evaluating. "You're the ones from the news, the lady who was kidnapped and the man who saved her." "Yes," Sophia said simply. "But more importantly, we're the people who want to be your parents, if you'll let us." Luis whispered something to Maya in Spanish. She nodded, then translated. "He wants to know if the dog is nice." Rusty, as if understanding, walked over slowly, sitting down in front of Luis and offering his paw to shake. The little boy's face lit up with the first smile they'd seen. "His name is Rusty," Tommy said eagerly. "He's a hero dog. He saved Mom and Dad lots of times." "Mom and Dad?" Maya asked carefully. "If you want," Daniel said, kneeling down to their level. "Or Daniel and Sophia. Or whatever feels right to you. This is your home now, no matter what you call us." Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, because of course she did. "Children, I made cookies. Come, come." As the kids followed Mrs. Chen inside, lured by the promise of sweets, Daniel heard Maya whisper to Luis in Spanish. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone, cautious hope. "We can do this," Sophia said, watching them go. "We can give them what they need. A family? A chance. The same chance you gave me when you opened that trunk." Inside, they found Tommy already showing Maya and Luis his dinosaur collection while Mrs. Chen plied them with cookies and questions about their favorite foods. It was chaos, but it was their chaos. That evening, after a day of settling in, of showing the kids their room, the neighborhood, the park where they'd play, Daniel found himself standing in the doorway of the kids' room. Tommy was reading to Luis from a picture book while Maya watched, still wary but no longer pulling away when Sophia gently braided her hair. This was what victory looked like. Not the guilty verdicts or the money restored or the company rebuilt, but this. 3 kids who needed love finding it, finding each other, finding home. "Dad?" Tommy looked up. "Luis wants to know if we can get another dog. A friend for Rusty." "We'll see," Daniel said, catching Sophia's eye over the kids' heads. "That means yes," Tommy told Luis confidently. "When grown-ups say we'll see, it usually means yes eventually." Maya smiled for the first time, a tiny thing that transformed her face. "You're weird," she told Tommy. "Thanks," he replied cheerfully. "You're weird too. We all are. That's what makes us family." Later, after 3 bedtime stories, 2 glasses of water, and 1 check for monsters under the bed, Daniel and Sophia collapsed on the couch, exhausted but content. "Today was good," Sophia said. "Today was perfect." Tommy called them weird and meant it as a compliment. "That's my boy. Our boy. Our 3 kids." She paused, then smiled. "Our weird, wonderful, perfect family." Outside, snow was falling again, covering the city in white, making everything clean and new. Inside, their apartment was warm and full of sleeping children and hope for tomorrow. The trunk that had started everything was evidence in an FBI warehouse somewhere, a relic of the worst day that had led to the best life. Victoria was in her cell, facing her choices. James was in custody, his threats finally silenced. The conspirators were falling one by one, their house of cards collapsed. But in an apartment above a laundromat, in a building that had seen better days, in a neighborhood that the rich usually avoided, a family that shouldn't exist was thriving. Daniel thought about the morning he'd found Sophia, how close he'd come to taking a different path, to missing the sound of her muffled cries. One moment of curiosity from a dog, one decision to investigate, and everything had changed. "What are you thinking about?" Sophia asked sleepily. "How lucky we are." Lucky? We were kidnapped, shot at, nearly blown up, and threatened by crazy ex-husbands.